Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to an all new season of the one and major series you love at UKSimRacing. It is of course the Multiclass series and we are back for season 3 in what is expected to be a absolutely hotly contested season of racing on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. Goodness me, it has been just over 6 months since things cooled down after season 2, but we are back once again to get an all new season of Multiclass racing underway, featuring your fan favourite classes of the GTPs, the LMP2s and the GT3s all out on circuit together, and it's going to be fast and furious racing from lights out to checker flag in each and every round and over the entirety of our 9-round championship. Speaking of which, we're here today to kick things off with round number 1 of the championship at what is the Portimão circuit, also known as the Circuito Internacional do Algarve in Portugal, with sweeping corners, its extended straight and its hairpins in between. Is a circuit that feels like a bit of a European roller coaster ride, not quite like Road Atlanta in the US of A, but it comes close. Indeed, one where our multi-class racing action is going to be thick, fast and furious, and our drivers will need to be on their toes if they want to come away victorious in this series sponsored by Virtual Racing School or VRS. But where are my manners, let's welcome you to this post-round broadcast of the circuit side live on both YouTube and Twitch at the official UK Sim Racing channels on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and search for UKSR. Alternatively, what is UK Sim Racing? Hello to you guys and girls tuning in via YouTube, including there Ryan Walker, Satinda Deanser, also Billy Bob at Hillbilly Racing there, also Chris Edisford, Sir Bottle Job, and meanwhile, of course, we also have the broadcast available on Twitch at twitch.tv/what is UK Sim Racing, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning in via Twitch. But regardless of what media platform you're tuning on, all your racing action is going to be brought to you by myself in the commentary booth. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Brits in the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action, whether it be as if it were live, like tonight, or live from circuit side on certain rounds, but more on that in a brief moment. And it's so good to see so many kind messages from all of you already, and so you absolutely excited. And we need to say a quick thank you, of course, to Tim Cox, who is our broadcaster and commentator and presenter for Season 2 of the Championship. And indeed, he's left a very high bar, which I can only aim to achieve, if not try to surpass at some point. But still, credit where it's due. Tim doing a fantastic job, and I'm very pleased to be back behind the microphone. As we get set and ready to go racing today, well, what does it mean for this being a post-round broadcast? Well, it means the racing action you're seeing is not live per se. It actually occurred as of what was this weekend just gone by on none other than Mother's Day in the UK, and that was none other than Sunday, the 30th of March 2025. We're bringing it to you as if it were live tonight. And therefore, here in the content booth, we do not know what happens, whether it be the practice session that's currently ongoing at a very wet and moist Algarve circuit, has to be said, or turns to the upcoming qualifying session, or the race indeed. So it's absolutely raw and new to us here in the content booth, and to many of you tuning at home it will be as well. But if you happen to know the results, well, please do not put any spoilers in the respective chats, and that way we can avoid those spoilers and bring it as if it were live for that raw viewing pleasure. But let's come on to our calendar then, because we've got plenty to cover here before we get underway with qualifying. And well, we start off with that review of our calendar. 9 rounds over the course of what is the best part of 2 months. And we begin the journey with round number 1 of the Autodromo Internacional do Algarve in Portugal. After today, we'll make our way to Japan for a week's time at the Fuji International Speedway, and that'll be round number 2. Long Beach's street circuit in the US state of California plays host to our drivers in round number 3, and street circuits and multi-class are always a treat, no doubt about it. And then round number 4, to complete the first half of the season, well, we're going to be at the Autodromo Internacional Enzo Dino Ferrari, also known more colloquially as the Imola circuit. And we stay in Italy after what will be our mid-season break, because on the 4th of May, we head to the Italian Temple of Speed, that is the Autodromo Nacional Monza for round number 5, and round number 6, we head back to the United States of America and back to the US state of California, intriguingly, for the Monterey County circuit of the WeatherTech Raceway at Laguna Seca on the 11th of May, and then we head to the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta all the way over to the US state of Georgia on the 18th of May for the ultimate roller coaster ride of road racing. Now, penultimate round, well, we head to the infamous, what is Circuit de Spa Francorchamps, and then we make our way from Belgium back to the United States of America for another street circuit race, the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle, and the Belle Isle Park will be where we crown our champions in round 9 of 9 on the 1st of June. There's plenty of stories to unfold, no doubt about it. And if you're wondering why certain rounds have got asterisks next to what is their numbers, well, those are the ones which are being planned to be presented via post-round broadcast due to scheduling. But do trust me when I say you're going to be having a broadcast for each and every round, and these post-round broadcasts are nothing to laugh at. Indeed, if you haven't tuned into one before, it's going to feel like you're watching the racing live after a time, because we've got some specialities which we've recently introduced to post-round broadcast, but we will come onto those in due course. But coming onto our circuit for today, it is the Grand Prix layout of the Autodromo Internacional do Algarve Algarve. Located in the city of Portimão in the Faro district of what is the region of Algarve in Portugal. Well, thank you to iRacing.com for the brilliant simulator and, of course, the circuit maps that come with it. But intriguingly with this circuit, a two-dimensional image doesn't show you just how many elevation changes are absolutely rampacked into its rambunctious distance of what is none other than a good few miles. 2.85 miles to be precise, and it does mean that this circuit is all about what is imagine those elevation changes, those sweepers, those hairpins, and also that wonderful roar out of Galp corner at turn number 15 onto the start-finish straight before that huge descent down into Primera corner at turn number 1. But as the drivers make the way around here, they'll find that direction change and knowing when exactly to pass a driver of another class or when to let a driver go is going to be just as important about knowing where to break the toe and battle on the brakes. But as we come into today then, let's talk a little bit about our rules. We can't go racing without them. And in terms of rules, well, we've narrowed it all the way down to a single slide here. And in terms of car setup, well, this is an open setup series. We continue the theme of previous seasons, and fuel loads have been restricted on car class based as follows. 80% for the GTPs, LMP2s go at 100%, they're very thirsty on fuel, it must be said, and quite light on the tanks, and the GT3s get 60%. Qualifying is a close qualifying format, and we will see our drivers having 4 flying laps available, plus their initial outlap out of the pit lane. That means our drivers all have an isolated instance of the circuit available to them, and that's where they'll put their laps together with no pressure from their peers around them. As for the race, well, it shall commence via a double file rolling start, with each car class separated by 5 to 10 seconds as managed by the class pole sitter, and that will be the GTPs most likely ahead of the LMP2s, and the LMP2s then ahead of the GT3s, albeit the GT3s, which consist of pros and AMs, they will all be intermingled together. There will be no inter-driver class separation from the GT3s. And the race shall start for all classes when the GTP class is shown the green flag, so as soon as the GTPs go, everybody else has to go as well, and that's when the racing begins. There is one mandatory pit stop for fuel. Changing tyres is entirely optional. We may see some tyre changes given the fact that fuel and tyres are changed at the same time, and each driver has one fast repair available should they need it, and we may also see drivers come into the pits if not for repairs or fuel or tyres. They may come if they picked up a drive-through penalty, and that's for 20 or more instant points. And all race journeys shall be conducted post-race. Now, for this season as well, we should point out that we have got a VRS subscription giveaway going away on each and every round of the race, and thanks to our title sponsor, the Virtual Racing School, each round we shall be giving away VRS competitive subscriptions to our competitors and you, our viewers, but particularly on YouTube only, I'm afraid. So if you are on Twitch, you may want to scoot your way over to YouTube just to take part in this. And well, for this round, our giveaways are 1 3-month subscription, and that's a raffle draw from the round's class winners. We'll come on to that at the end of today's broadcast. A 2-month subscription, which will be the raffle draw from drivers with the VRS logo on their car, and then a 1-month subscription, and that is a raffle draw for any YouTube viewer who is subscribed to the channel and the UKSimRacing channel and types in capital letters VRS in the chat, and that giveaway is open now. We will close it at the end of the racing action, and we will be announcing your winner live on broadcast after the racing concludes. So remember, if you want to be part of that 1-month subscription for the Virtual Racing School, all you got to do is in the YouTube chat right now, when at any point in this broadcast, type in capital letters VRS or Victor Romeo Sierra if you want it in NATO language. But as our drivers get ready to go racing in, well, let's come on to our circuit, and indeed, let's talk about our schedule for today. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, in fact, not Greenwich Mean Time there. We moved into British Summer Time, and let's not get our time zones incorrect. Let's get them right. So British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinate Time, UTC +1. And as we can see, in just over 5 minutes time, we'll be heading into qualifying, 10 minutes in duration in that closed qualifying session, and all the drivers having a good amount of time to try and get their best possible laps in. They're going to need that time given how slippery this tarmac's going to be at Portimão, and then after that, we'll be heading to the grid for our feature race, our 60-minute feature at 8:10 this evening. Track temperature at the moment, only what is 18 degrees centigrade, 20 degrees centigrade ambient temperature, but that rain is bringing the temperatures down, no doubt about it, and that is going to make it a very, very tricky circuit to master. And as our drivers make the way on around here in this practice session, well, we're coming to the close. We're less than 5 minutes away now from making our way into that qualifying session. And well, we need to introduce some of our drivers out here, including what is none other than Daniel Pays, the old dudes in cars driver, running in the Ford Mustang GT3, and he will be in the GT3 AM class. And he has been an absolute staple of the UKSimRacing grids over what has been the last couple of years. Indeed, a fan favourite. And whilst I'm not allowed to have favourites in the commentary booth, I could definitely say it's not quite a UKSimRacing grid if you haven't got old dudes in cars on the grid, and if you haven't got Daniel Pays there as well. An absolute gentleman on and off the circuit as he makes his way into Primera at turn number 1. But there's one of our GT3 AM drivers. What about our GT3 Pro drivers, I hear you ask? Well, here we have Andrew M. Fairley as he makes his way up the rise and in towards what will be the left-hand kink there. That's going into turn 6, 7, and another Ford GT driver, or Ford Mustang driver, I should say. Albeit we're not just picking on the Fords there, not that I have an inclination towards the Fords. For those who know, you do indeed know. And as he makes his way on through at turn number 9, up the rise in towards 10, with a DDK Racing driver, new to the grid for this season, I do believe. and in that rather striking silver and light green livery there with the black sidings, as well as a big slide there coming through the left hander in the uphill rise into turns 12 and 13, and having to catch the car as best as he possibly can, but just about does so, as in the end he does decide to park things up. But from a driver who parks things up to a driver who hasn't parked things up since what is 2008, because he is in theory our oldest member on this grid, albeit not in terms of his age, I should point out, but instead in terms of when his iRacing account was created. Would you believe it? We have a man here who has what is one of the earliest iRacing accounts from 2008. It's none other than Tom Farr in the LMP2 at Delara machine, as he makes his way through here. He is an absolute veteran of the iRacing simulator and a veteran of sim racing as a whole, and we're very happy to see him here showing off his veterancy skills. He makes his way across that timeline with a 52.933. They're still trying to fit under a bit more time out there as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, and we've got some youngsters in terms of their iRacing careers on this grid, a couple that only created their accounts, I do believe, in the last 4 to 5 months, unless I'm mistaken, whereas Tom Farr, meanwhile, goes back all the way when he's 17 years. Well, goodness me, turning virtual laps over 17 years. I'll tell you one thing, I turned my first virtual laps, what would have been in terms of sim racing, about 7 to 8 years ago, so I'm a youngster by comparison to this man, but I do believe he's not one of the oldest in terms of age on the grid, and indeed we're not going to talk about his age because that's a little bit unfair to him, but what is fair to him is the fact we give him that exposure there in number 171, and we wish him all the best in the DDK racing machine. But as he heads out to the hairpin, we then looked from our LMP2 driver to one of our GTP drivers, and well, it wouldn't quite be a GTP grid if we didn't have this man in it, Austin William Campbell, and the man who's absolutely ferocious on the brakes and absolutely lightning quick through the corners, and indeed right now the fastest for everybody out there in the GTP class in terms of single lap pace by 1.5 tenths over Ryan Moles, and well, both Austin William Campbell and Ryan Moles in what is the BMW LMDH. And well, of course, in terms of what's new on the grid for this season, we do have a couple of new cars, but one in particular that will stand the test of time, and well, the Effect Simulations drivers is running it. It's none other than Joshua G. Wilson as he makes his way on through there. The right-hander return number 8 in towards 9, and he's in the Ferrari 499P. And of course, this car, the infamous car that marked what was the return of Ferrari to prototype racing in 2023. And you had to be there to believe it when Ferrari brought home a victory in the 24 Hour of Le Mans, and then a year later doing so again in the Ferrari 499, albeit in the sister car, with the 51 winning in what was 2023 and the 50 winning in what was 2024, albeit it didn't quite work out poetically. It should have been the 50 that would have won in 2023 unless I'm mistaken, and indeed it didn't quite win. In the end it was the 51, but the fact being that Ferrari have won the 24 Hour of Le Mans back-to-back for the last 2 years. Could they go for a hat-trick later this year? Well, from the reality to the simulator, the Ferrari is here, and it is going to mix it up with its GTP veterans alike, including what is the BMW LMDH, the very first GTP I do believe introduced to the simulator, and we've also got out there as well the likes of the Porsche 963, which is being piloted by Thomas Cope, albeit he's out the car at the moment and in the pit lane, so we won't be able to get a camera shot of him. But as we do come from our fastest class back to our slowest class out there, well, let's come to other drivers here, and here's Michael Meyer as he makes his way on down towards what is turn number 5, albeit parks the car up there and decides enough's enough, as meanwhile we look to the SAS Racing driver, and SAS Racing back on the grid after what has been a bit of a hiatus from the UKSimRacing series, and you've got 2 drivers here in the form of Alex Brown, the GT3 AM class, and I believe as well we may also have, unless I'm mistaken, Richard White, although now that I've said that, I think it's another member of the SAS Racing crew, and well, their name escapes my mind immediately, but it's good to see Alex Brown here, and I do believe this is his first ever time racing the UKSimRacing series. But hold the phone, ladies and gentlemen, practice is over, it's time for qualifying, and we'll be back in a couple of, well, it's about 30 seconds time to get qualifying underway. And it is go, go, go for qualifying. 10 minutes on a circuit that has dried a little bit, or at least the rain stopped falling, it would seem. And, well, you can still see a wet line out there, no doubt about it, as you can see the different colorations of the tarmac surface. So this is going to make qualifying a very interesting adventure indeed. Oh, my goodness. We can see there Patrick Thompson as he makes his way out of the pits and in towards turn number 1. Well, definitely the water hasn't suddenly disappeared, and the water is still there. And therefore, he's going to have to crawl around this circuit and try to find the best way to get the best possible lap time. And of course, with the recent redevelopment of what has been the handling characteristics and particularly what is the tyre mod. Oh my goodness, that's a big slide there coming through turn number 4. Patrick Thompson immediately toes back to the pit lane. Not only can get away with that given the fact he has not completed his out lap, so therefore it won't count effectively as I understand it with regards to what will be using up one of his available laps, because remember they get the out lap plus also 4 flying laps. But what it does mean right now, everybody is going to have to tease and trickle their way around here to find what grip is available over the 10 minutes. And the point we were going to say is with the recent redevelopment of the tyre model for the prototypes, particularly the GTPs, what it does mean now is that the prototypes take a lot longer to build up that tyre temperature in dry conditions. And in wet conditions, you can imagine it's going to be even harder here, albeit Oisin Hereford in the Dallara P217, making it look absolutely smooth, sweet and light butter as he makes his way over the crest and down then in towards the rise, while roaring his way in towards turns 13 and 14, the switchback hairpins. And as he makes his way up the hill, the Dallara not quite as affected by the tyre redevelopment compared to what has been the GTPs, and therefore we could be expecting the LMP2s are going to qualify in amongst what will be the GTPs, albeit they'll be separated on the grid for the purposes of going racing. But when they do go racing, you can imagine the LMP2s are going to be very fast off the block, and therefore they could get intermingled with the GTPs before even the end of the first lap. But we'll have to wait and see whether that's what happens, as here goes Hereford then to make his way onto his first flying lap. And as he comes on around, well, a lot of our drivers here now starting to make the way on their first adventures onto flying laps, and therefore it's all going to be about trying to find where that little bit of grip is, where they can. But as I head in towards turn number 1 there, well, bringing it on through, and you'll notice they're avoiding touching those curbs as much as humanly possible here, and the car snaking every little bit as he does briefly dip a tyre or two onto the curbs to try and straighten the run between the corners. And that's the thing for turns 1 through to 3. You really do want to try and straighten those runs, carry as much speed as you possibly can. But now as he makes his way down towards turn number 5 in towards the braking zone here, we'll keep in mind as well, these prototypes, they do not have what is anti-lock braking systems or ABS, so it's all modulated by the driver as he comes out of the hairpin. Absolutely brilliant transition there. No sign of a wobble on the rear of the Effect Simulations machine. And up the hill he goes in towards turn 6 and 7. We're staying with the exterior cameras here to give you an idea of how he's having to contest with in terms of the spray or the water that's on the circuit, and also with regards to those little micro adjustments he makes his way around there. But it looks absolutely planted to the circuit right now, and indeed as this circuit potentially gets drier and drier, assuming we're not going to have any more rain later in today, well, you can imagine these prototype machines will really be able to start to utilize what will be their downforce in order to put in even stronger laps. But he heads over the crest and now down and up the rise then in towards turns 13 and 14, that lovely sequence where you're essentially compressed and packed into the car as you come down and back up into the rise, and you breathe for a second. You don't feel the weight compressing onto your chest as he comes out 13 in towards 14. The 907 driver right now, well, he's putting in an absolutely brilliant lap, absolutely smooth as he comes on through the final corner. You can see there, very timid on the throttle at first until he gets the car pointed out of the back hairpin, and now heading in towards Galp corner, turn number 15, almost flat out when they're in dry conditions. But meanwhile here, it's not going to be flat out and heading towards the line. What's it going to be for Hereford? He'll be one of the first LMP2s to get about a lap on the board, and it is going to be, well, that's a 1 minute 47.0 as we see some GTP laps coming as well. Sakioskis there getting only what was 2 tenths behind Hereford, and Gonçalves in P3 there, a further 4.5 tenths back. Meanwhile, Thomas Cope, who we see here in the Porsche 963, and Olympus Esports' his driver, one of the premier drivers. An absolutely lovely chap. I had the pleasure of meeting Thomas in person a couple of years ago, and well, he makes his way on through in towards turn number 4. Well, right now the Porsche driver keeping his head down here and looking at very quick indeed on a 46.0, almost a second faster than Ryan Moles. And well, meanwhile, the Protect Motorsport driver of Ryan Moles back on the grid at once again. It's been some time since we've seen him there, but it's always good to see him out there in the BMW LMDH. And all the drivers right now absolutely trying to find those little bit of grip as much as possible. As we do say hello to Ryan Moles in the YouTube chat, that guy Moles, also to Alex Brown, also to the Dark Owl, who asked the question, anyone here going to Donington Park on Sunday? Well, unfortunately, I can't quite make it, but I'm sure you might find some company there in the YouTube chat who are planning to. Just a reminder, of course, we are giving away 1 month subscription from the Virtual Racing School, and to enter into that subscription challenge, or that subscription giveaway, I should say, all you need to do in the YouTube chat is type in capital letters VRS. If you've already done so, don't do so again, because it won't give you any more entries, but for those who have perhaps tuned in since we announced it, that's all you need to do, and we will announce the winner at the end of today's race. But as we do see it, Mole's making his way up the rise. Well, let's come to some GT3s heading around there. And the fastest man out there currently right now is none other than the Welshman of Cy Anthony and the Porsche 992. The Porsche, a strong car typically in what is tricky conditions for the fact the engine mounted over what is the rear axle, being rear engine rear wheel drive with flat six machinery. And well, Porsche sticking to that mantra. The only exception in modern motorsport in history being the Porsche 911 RSR GTE, which due to regulations I do believe is mid-engine rear wheel drive. Otherwise it's 992, the latest rendition of the Porsche 911 classification, well running there with that rear engine rear wheel drive formula and being very strong in these very tricky conditions. But as he makes his way into the right hander there, and over the crest he goes. Well, Cy Anthony right now only what is half a tenth faster than Casper Brotner in the Ford GT. A very different style of car in terms of front engine rear drive, but a very stable car in wet conditions, albeit it's got a lot of mass. But the problem with it is, if you do end up upsetting the weight of that car, the weight distribution, the Ford Mustang will very quickly snap on you, and it's not an easy car to get back after that. But as we do see Cy Anthony making his way up the rise here, and absolutely looking locked in, as off camera, Patrick Thompson sets the fastest lap of everybody in overall and GTP on a 1:42.885. My good lord, that is 1.2 seconds almost faster than Thomas Cope's time. We thought that was a boundary pusher, and Patrick Thompson simply says, you know what, I'm going to put down a statement before we even get to the end of qualifying. Well, if that's what a statement is, I can't imagine if he's able to do it over the race distance, what that's going to be. I think that's going to be a speech in terms of laps he's doing. But as Cy Anthony heads towards the timeline, well, none other than what is Andy Archer has made his way onto provisional pole for GT3 Pro, and Cy Anthony immediately responds and goes 6 tenths faster, almost down to 50 at 6.340. But what about, I hear you ask, some of what is our GT3 AM drivers? Well, we've got a couple of those roaring the way on around, including Darren Sharples here in the old Dudes in Cars McLaren 720S Evo. And as he heads in towards what is turn number 14, well, making his way on down and rolling on through. And for those of you wondering, by the way, with regard to the what is the situation in the Conte booth, and I can see Billy Bob already talking about it there, reminding me to take a breath of fresh air every so often. Well, thankfully for this season, UKSimRacing have supplied me with an oxygen bottle in what is the Conte booth. So every so often, I may take a breather, albeit with my motor mouth as they make the way on through. I'll have to remind myself to do so, but I appreciate the concern there, Billy Bob. And as our drivers make the way on through, all right, now heading on down. Let's jump on board here with a flying lap in the hands of none other than Darren Sharples, and bring up that dashboard up as he heads in towards turn number 3. So here it's all about positioning the car as he makes his way onto the brakes into the hairpin, coming all the way down to first gear, and as he does so, 35 miles an hour at the apex before now moving into turn number 4. You can just feel a balance in the throttle there as he comes through turn at number 4, holding second gear and feeding the throttle in little by little as he now makes his way down towards what is turn number 5. But as he does so, hard on the brakes here, well, initially coming hard onto the brakes and then just smoothing off, but you'll notice not getting close to the apex curb, a lot of standing water there, so lets the car roll out and then up the hill in towards turn at number 6 he goes, over the rise from second up into third and onto the brakes here, and we're completely unsighted for our camera, but he knows where he's going when he comes into turn 7, then into 8 and through the right hander, and again just letting the car run a little bit deep there to avoid any standing water on the apex curb, albeit on a hill it won't puddle as easily. And now down he goes here and up into left hander. And this is where we saw a number of drivers in practice go wide. You can see a lot of standing water down the inside of that corner, but now over the crest and in towards what is turn 10 and then 11. You set up 10 in order to get turn 11 absolutely spot on, but a little wobble there from Sharples as he just clips the apex curb at 11 through 12 and up into 13 he goes. And as he does so there, you can just hear him having to lift off the throttle, the car sliding away with that weight transfer and the fact he's coming down into a major depression and then back up in the rise. And now in towards the right hander of turn number 14 as he comes in towards the right-hander. Well, Sharples now will just feed the throttle in little by little, feel the nose bite, and then he's got to blast it because it's all the momentum you need to carry into 15. Let's listen in. You can hear they're lifting as he goes over the rise, knowing he doesn't want the car to understeer wide, and for Sharples it's a tentative lap, but in the end it gets it to its conclusion. And as he heads over that timeline, what's it going to be in excess of 140 miles an hour? It's a 59.0 there, puts him P9, and well, a decent lap there for Sharples, but knowing there's a lot to do with regards to this qualifying session. Everybody struggling out there for the best part, unless your name's Jack Osborne in the GT3s, who's the fastest of the GT3 pros, and the GT3s over on a 56.030, but qualifying coming to an end. And meanwhile, Richard Jones makes his way into the pit lane after being on a very strong lap. I think that might have been an invalidated lap, but he's the fastest of the GT3 AMs at 57.406. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the clock strikes 10 minutes, and that is qualifying complete. We're not going any further, and well, we're going to be very shortly heading to your grid then to take you through how they all line up for our first race of the season. But as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how the lineup for our season opener is as follows. Patrick Thompson takes overall and GTP pole position for Williams Sim Racing Academy. He's joined on the front row of the grid by Austin William Campbell for Effect Simulations Club Sport. On row number 2, it's Thomas Cope for Olympus Esports and Joshua G. Wilson for Effect Simulations. Row 3 goes to Ryan Moles for Protect Motorsport, and none other than Christian Maltrex starts P6. On row number 4, it's going to be a combination of Heroldus Jotatus for Absolute Motorsport A-Slip, and by the looks of things, the classes haven't been separated, so it will be an LMP2 that starts P8 and your LMP2 pole sitter for Oistein Hereford. Behind them, on what is row number 5, continuing the integrating the classes then, it will be Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport and Helder Gonçalves for Tractix Racing. Behind them, on row number 6, it will be none other than what is James Acklam, the privateer, head of Emil Koopmans for Effect Simulations Club Sport. And it'll be Justus Stakielkas for Over Limit Racing, ahead of Daniel Shilcock, who make up row number 7. Behind the Tractix Racing driver, it's Nathan Foster for Empire Motorsport, and what is Tom Farr for DDK Racing Team. And we look forward to seeing how the team gets on there. DDK Racing Team, one of a very rising stars of teams across a number of GT3 and Multiclass series. And then we do have none other than what is Amrit Rajesh Ghosh. I do believe that's how you say his name, although I might be incorrect on that one. In fact, I might correct myself a little bit later, and it's Amit Rajit, in fact, Ghosh. But he starts P17, the privateer, ahead of none other than James Ibrahim, and the Effect Simulations Club Sport driver being followed up there by Sam Sherwood to Protect Motorsport. And then we do have Ben Cullen, who completes your top 20 for Effect Simulations. Outside the top 20 and the top 10 rows, we then start to make our way into GT3 territory. But before that, Matthew Cheverton for Aztec Racing starts P21 in the GTP. He's joined by the company of none other than what is your GT3 Pro pole sitter after all laps are accounted for, and it is Jack Osborne for Atomic Esports. Congratulations to Jack for a brilliant pole lap. And then we do see Cy Anthony starting just behind there for Dragon Razio, and he'll be starting P23 ahead of Tom Weston for DDK Racing Team. And then it'll be none other than Andy Archer, who starts his day P25 for Atomic Esports ahead of Old Dudes in Cars Casper Brockner. And then we do have none other than Andrew M. Farley for DDK Racing Team starting P27. With then, what is your pole sitter in the GT3 AM class, Richard Jones for SAS Racing. Not Richard White, the battle of the two Richards. Richard Jones is the other driver for SAS Racing. I thought I'd get it right eventually. It was a Richard in there somewhere. And then we have completing your top 30, Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Irvine in tribute to Eddie Irvine. And then we do see P30 then, none other than what is James Foster. Behind them, starting on what will be row number 16, it's none other than the driver of Jack Barker, and he's got the company of Steve Hughes. That's made for Racing and Anti Sports. And then we do have Daniel Pace for Old Dudes in Cars starting P23 ahead of Darren Sharples for Old Dudes in Cars, the two teammates together across two GT3 classes. And then we do have Matthew Morris starting at P35 there for Racy Games ahead of Matthew Meyer for Team LSR, or Michael Meyer in fact, let's get it right. And then we do have what is there, John Davis starting P37 for the Wrong Stuff ahead of Alex Brown for SAS Racing, with Simon Bamber for Effect Simulations, none other than starting what is P39, and he will be ahead of Ryan Walker for Altitude 3M Esports. And then we do have just a little bit further behind them, as the grid still wants to make its way away. It's taking some time. We'll have on row number 21, Ryan M. Davies for Empire Motorsport ahead of Sean Cranley-Swash for Ansi Sports. And on the final full row of the grid, it is going to be the combination of Rob Windsor for UKSimRacing Irvine and UKSimRacing Buttons Matt Edmondson in tribute to Jensen Button. And then starting last but not least, but let's not forget about him, James Conley for UKSimRacing Button starting P45. So 45 drivers in attendance here out of our 60 entrants. Not all of them able to make this round. A number of them most likely due to Mother's Day, but the field already making its way on around here. We're not too far away from going green flag racing, and well, when we do, it's going to be exciting, no doubt about it, as the drivers gradually tiptoe their way on around here. But you can see how the field has tried to separate itself as best as they possibly can. We do have some drivers of which the prototype classes who are starting from towards the back of the field, so they're going to have to carve their way through, but we have had the leaders of the GTPs and the LMP2 separate from each other, so very well managed by them, despite what is a little bit of an administration error, but still those things happen. And well, as they make the way on through, it's also raining again. Well, hold up the phone here. This could really turn things on its head, for the fact we've had what was a drying practice session going into what was a drying qualifying session, and now the rain is back in force. And well, I'm not quite sure if we're able to get the tyre compound data on screen. If we can, it might be a limitation on replay file. Unfortunately, it is a limitation, so it's anybody's guess here who's on the wets and who's on the dryers. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody's on the wet tyre right now, because with this rain falling, being on a dry tyre, particularly if you're in a prototype, that is going to be tantamount to disaster. And well, right now all our prototype drivers are going to be trying to get any heat they can into that wet compound tyre, for the simple reason it's going to feel freezing cold, and particularly if you're towards the front here with the likes of our Cadillac for what is Joe Newman there for Empire Motorsports. They are going to be struggling on the opening couple of laps compared to the LMP2s behind them. And I think the GT3's further out. The GT3 pack has in fact given itself a huge gap behind, and I think that is a good reason. They're wary of the fact they could catch up to the prototypes very quickly, whereas the LMP2s, they're about 6 to 7 seconds away from the leaders, so this is going to be a very interesting race start. But looking at back to the front then, well, we need to look at the front of the field because we are only moments away now from going green, green, green for the first time this season. And I'm not talking about environmentally friendly because we're going to be roaring up the gas to its maximum, and when we do, it is going to be led away by the combination of Austin William Campbell and Thomas Cope, with a number of drivers who lined up on the front row deciding to make their way into the pit lane and see what the weather's going to play out like. But it will be up to our pole sitters here to take us to the green flag racing. And it's lights out and away we go as Austin William Campbell takes the green flag racing here for the season opener in Season 3 of the UKSimRacing Multiclass Series. And our drivers will roar their way down towards turn 1 for an hour of racing as they come on down the dip then in towards turn 1. Well, some moves being made early, but nobody trying to make an overall attempt. But as they head in towards turn number 1 for the LMP2s, where it's already a bit of battle in there. Oh my goodness, and that is contact between Amit Rajit Ghosh and where's James Acklam as Ghosh ends up into the barrier here at turn number 1. But meanwhile, here come all the GT3s, and meanwhile, they're up to temperature already, or a little bit more, and as they all enter the braking zone, it's too wide and a bit of elbows out there between Casper Brotner and I believe that's the Lamborghini of Andy Archer. Archer gets clear, and we can see Jack Barcott on the inside here immediately trying to capitalise on the situation, and Brotner decides to go very deep, squeezes Barker to the inside of the apex curb, and in the end it will be Brotner who gets back ahead as Barker decides he doesn't want to play into that. Meanwhile, Richard Jones also making some initial progress, but James Foster has leapt ahead of him in the GT3 AM class as they head forwards towards what is turn number 5, and that's Ryan Walker trying to make his way through the field, given the fact that he had a difficult qualifying session, and it's showing right now. But from them, looking back up towards the GTPs, it's a side-by-side battle there between Wilson and Cope. Wilson gets ahead there coming out of what was, I believe, turns 8 into 9, and will Cope backs off there in the Porsche 963. A little bit of a wobble there, and it's going to enable Wiz Cope to get back on the inside. Also, William Campbell, they're struggling as they make the way out of what is at turn number 10, 11 in towards 12, and it looks so here. Cope might have the tyres switched on a little bit more now, or perhaps they're all just trying to tentatively find where's that time out of the circuit, and it is looking as though for many of our drivers it's about where the grip is and how quickly they can find it. But we can see the flashing rear lights there, and what is well a GTPs as that's very close between the number 4 Christian Maltret and Emil Koopmans. Koopmans in the LMP2 switching back here, and here what we're talking about with regards to the LMP2s being the faster car initially, and will be very close on pace to the GTPs even after they all get their tyre temperature together. But coming on through, Øystein Heffer, they're battling side by side with Emil Koopmans, the leader of the LMP2 class, as they come across the time in line, and you can see that the fact the LMP2s have jumped to the top hand corner of your left hand side of your screen, well, that indicates they're the faster car compared to the GTPs. But as they come in towards turn number 1, well, the drivers right now all segueing back and forth in the prototype classes, and we'll further back, we've got a bit more battling here between what is our GT3 AM drivers. Michael Meyer trying to chase down James Connolly with Alex Brown and Daniel Pays a bit further behind, and in fact that is Pays on the inside there, the Ford Mustang standing tall with Alex Brown. They're just letting the place go and decide not to fight it too hard. I think playing the bigger pitch here, which is just take your time and don't do anything silly at this time, and that's quite a sensible approach, albeit as they make the way up towards the timeline. It's going to look one side then the other, so here comes Brown looking for a potential move, but the Mustang's got the overspeed here on the straights. That Mustang very strong, both of these machines being what is powered by 8 cylinders, albeit a twin turbo for the McLaren, the Mustang being what is naturally aspirated, and in towards turns 2 and 3 they go, and it will be Pays to hold on to the position. But in terms of your class leaders, well, after what has been one absolutely brilliant start and lap to this race, was Austin William Campbell, who leads by what is the best part of half a second over Thomas Cope, with Joshua G. Wilson running deep again, and this time getting caught out by turn 11. Turn 11 simply absorbs him off into the distance as he brings it on down in towards turn number 12. Around his outside goes Ryan Moles. That's brave. Moles are going to try and stay there, but here comes Wilson. Wilson loses it. It's a big lock up on the rear brakes, and that sends the car around. The rear left brake just letting go before the others, and it's very easy to make that mistake even at the highest level here. And well, as the effect simulations driver gets it back together, he falls between Øystein Herford and Emil Koopmans, and well, now he's going to have to try and find his way a little bit further up the order, but that's going to be frustrating for Wilson, understandably, given the pace he was showing. And meanwhile, we've got more GTP battle in action, as it is side by side there for a brief moment, and Christian Maltrek gets ahead of Nathan Foster as the drivers make the way through the corner and in towards turn number 15. But as they roll the way through, well, in towards what is another lap they go. We look a little bit further back to Matt Edmondson being passed there by John Davis, the wrong stuff driver, getting it all right, and that lovely livery, I must say, on John Davis's car, really striking livery. If nothing else, that deserves 10 out of 10 for what is a very colourful livery on the car. And well, to be fair, I do know that John does love his colourful liveries, and it shows, as meanwhile Matt Edmondson now finds himself under a little bit of pressure from behind from what is James Connolly, who's closing up gradually, albeit between them is one of our prototypes is going to make its way on through, and therefore I think Edmondson just waiting for that opportunity to settle himself back down after a bit of a slide. And sometimes you do have to just regroup mentally and decide, you know what, I'm not going to fall into a lull of security. As meanwhile that gets very tight as we come back to turn number 5, and that is far. Looking up the inside of James Ibrahim was on the outside of the hairpin, and the two of them are separated by small margins, and right now it looks though they're far just falling backwards a little bit and trying to get things settled down. And well, James Ibrahim absolutely going for it, as was Daniel Shilcock there, and the fighter between these drivers absolutely golden. But speaking of golden opportunities, that's Joshua Wilson just a little bit further up the road, getting back ahead of Helder Gonçalves, and now trying to chase after Oystein Hereford, as we are starting to see the fastest of our GTP drivers picking up the pace as there's a tap to the rear of Wilson's car by Gonçalves, and in the end Wilson just not able to get the tyres down in terms of what's the power, and in the end Gonçalves I think not knowing where to go, and in the end in terms of putting his throttle on, he's gone on and he's tapped what is Wilson on the back, and Wilson spinning around there, and that's going to be a frustrating moment for Joshua Wilson in the fact his race is going from good to bad to backwards very quickly. And well, from there now we've got Oystein Hereford being pressured by Helder Gonçalves I should say, being pressured by just Stokiakos and also Daniel Shilcock as they come through turn number 15. But as they make the way up the rise and onto another lap, well, these drivers right now all running together, but you can see that Shilcock and Stokiakos looking for that battle between each other, and Shilcock trying to go all the way in here as it's going to be very tight to turn 1. That's very bold from Shilcock. He's going to try and stop the car. He can't quite do so. Stokiakos in the end defending well to the inside. It did get elbows out between the two of them. Those two drivers absolutely keen, and meanwhile James Ibrahim absolutely goes all in, but the car goes round into turn number 3, and James Ibrahim in the end very bold, very brave, but not enough brakes in these wet conditions, and Ibrahim going for a spin. And well, it's not over yet, because now it's Stokiakos versus Shilcock part 2 here. They're not quite done into turn number 5, and it's going to be Stokiakos all in on the brakes there, and will this time gets it stopped, or does he? He goes a little bit too deep in these LMP2 machines. Brilliant battle in between them as we look back from the rear of what is the P3 machine of Stokiakos as they head in towards turns 7, 8 and 9, and as they come on through at the right hand complex here, well, it's no change at the moment, or is it? As it's very close between the two of them coming out of the corner, absolutely standing on hairs here between the 747 and the 270, but great balance. As long as they keep it clean, well, we don't mind it, but when it starts to get a bit more elbows out, that is where they could be seeing red. But right now the only red we're seeing is the red on the livery of Stokiakos' car, and as he comes out of turn number 11 into towards 12 and 13. That's the way it's going to be in terms of he holds the position. But we need to take a look back at what exactly happened to James Ibrahim. And here is, I believe, for the first time in the UKSimRacing post-round broadcast, our first ever replay. And here we go with regards to what happened. So Ibrahim looking on the inside here, under braking through what was turn number 3. Squeezed the apex there, and in the end you could see the rear left brake just letting go there and spinning up the tyre before everything else, and it all ended in tears there. It could have been far, far worse, to be fair, but it just cost him dear and not the progress he wanted to make whatsoever. As we go back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do return to live racing action then, and still plenty more to come over this distance, no doubt about it. These laps will continue to be ushered in as rapidly as possible, and all the drivers right now absolutely delivering. It's been a brilliant opening few laps, no doubt about it. And we'll look into it. Casper Brotner, meanwhile, our GT3 driver here, finds himself being passed by James Acklam around the outside. The LMP2 making its way on through, albeit that's not too considerable a battle there. You won't be too worried about that one. I think we've still got some prototypes who are very tentatively make their way around the circuit. But whilst this has been playing out, we have also had a change for overall lead, and it's Thomas Cope, in fact, who has retaken the lead overall and is now starting to roar onwards here as he makes his way up the rise and in towards what will be turns 10 and 11. You can see that Porsche 963 now really starting to get into its optimum zone right now, and Cope delivering the goods time and time again. But he has got Austin William Campbell for close company. It's not as though he's completely breaking away here, and as he makes his way on through turn 13 in towards 14, well, 7 tenths is the gap on average. But the thing about 7 tenths is it's nothing when you do have the 905 breathing down your back, and as the man affectionately referred to as AWC, if he can see a way to victory, then there's a guarantee he's going to go for it. But to be fair to Cope, he is a multi-time champion, particularly in the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup. Many of you remember in his legendary battles with Philip Hammer, so therefore it's not as though these two are strangers to victory and hard fighting as they head across that timeline and down towards turn number 1. as they head on down in towards the braking zone for the left hand, with the right hand, the left hand of our camera, but right hand from the actual driver's perspective. No change between them, and everything now starting to calm down a little bit for the moment, albeit as soon as I say that, of course, we are going to see some more battling, and here are some GTPs fighting each other, as it is going to be Christian Maltrek. They're looking on the inside through turn number 15 versus Sam Sherwood, and we're just trying to get Sherwood to make a mistake and run deep there, but Sherwood not falling for it, and 9, if there was a tap, it would all be on Maltrek as they power their way down the start-finish straight. Patrick Thompson only what is 2 tenths behind, and Thompson, who put the car right towards the front of the grid, will in the end starting a bit further back in the Ferrari 499 and having to make his way on through what the weather conditions. And I would imagine here some drivers potentially investing in a different tyre compound, given the fact we had rain. We didn't have rain, we haven't got any rain at the moment. The weather can't make up its mind, and as they head through turn number 4 and over the rise, there's a big slide there. Thompson takes evasive action. Maltrek also does so, and Sam Sherwood stops it from going around. That's a brilliant car control from all 3 drivers, albeit Sherwood doesn't gain any points. He loses some potentially at the end of the race. If that's going to be a move from Wilson, who squeezes him to the inside there into turn number 5. They make the way through. These two absolutely glued door to door as they come in towards turn number 6. And well, I can tell you one thing, Sherwood may have almost had a near spin, but it hasn't phased him at all. And Wilson is absolutely digging in to try and make the move. And I think he's going to get it there, as we can see Sherwood being run a little bit deep as we ride on board with the Protect Motorsport driver riding inside the car here. And already there goes Wilson running off into the distance. And well, the 71 being left with us for a brief moment. Sherwood having to battle there with the steering wheel for a brief moment. And well, right now, right on 10 hooks, he goes deep, misses breaking point and takes this gateway. He's got to be careful of the standing water there, and just about brings it back together, but that could have been far worse. But brilliant control there from all 4 drivers involved, and fantastic battling as a result. But Sherwood in the end just coming a little bit too hot when he was on the counter attack, and now having to pick things back up. But I'm sure he will, given the fact all he needs to do is get it cooled down for a lap or 2, and we do know that Sam can when he needs to. But coming from our prototypes then, so some GT3s now are starting to get a little bit closer together, albeit it's a bit of a sandwiching of multiple classes, as we do see DCW Racing's James Foster, who now leads what is the GT3 AM class ahead of Richard Jones, but between the two of them by half a second is Nathan Anstis as they make the way on through. And there you can see what is the battle box in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and that goes to show you how the 4 drivers are separated, and particularly what is the top 2 of the silver class. That's the main focus, with Jones on the attack there in the Acura Evo. And once they make the way over the rise, you'll probably hear me refer to that Acura as a Honda every so often, given that is the lean-in, with Acura being the American portion of what is the Honda Motoring Company, and of course the Acura NSX being developed in the United States of America, but wearing the Honda badge outside the United States, in Japan, and also in the United Kingdom. But enough of trivia aside, and that's not going to win you, well, that might win you a pub quiz, but it's not going to win you points on the grid, as our drivers make the way through. And right now, James Foster, regardless of whether it's an Acura behind him or elsewhere, the McLaren driver absolutely delivering in number 84. You can see the little wobbles on the rear end, but to be fair, keeping that McLaren pointed in the right direction, and that's all he needs to do. As we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Paul Lousteau, also to Sammy, and I hope you're doing well. Also saying hello there to Harry Shaw, and also to Slash Noodles. I think I've caught you all, but if I haven't, well, I do apologise there. I'm sure I'll catch you a little bit later in the broadcast, if not later on in the season. But as our GT3 AM leader tears another lap down and moves on to his next one, well, it's Anstis versus Jones just behind, and you can imagine for Richard Jones here, well, he'd love to make a move, but there is your race leader overall. Thomas Cope now coming across the line, going on to what will be his 8th tour of the circuit under race conditions, and picking absolutely perfectly right. And now we're going to see that intermingling of the classes, as that is going to be a very frustrated Austin William Campbell to see plenty of GT3s in front, and the traffic has fallen very poorly for him. Meanwhile, for Thomas Cope, it's come out absolutely perfectly. In fact, he was able to segue his way through turns 1 into 3. Meanwhile, William Campbell's having to pick his way through now, and well, it's absolutely on tender hooks here. In the fact that in the dry, this will be tough enough as is, but in the wet, you've got to remember your braking distances are far longer in these GTPs compared to the GT3s, because you have no ABS or electronics to stop the car for just wanting to go straight on, and the brakes in the end really require you to try and get that water out from underneath the pad, and when you do, that's when you can start to find a little bit of retardation, and therefore you can pull that speed away. As meanwhile, what on earth's gone on there, as it's all gone around for Thomas Cope. We just literally see him fall out of camera shot for a brief moment, and then rematerialises, and when he does, Austin William Campbell picks up the lead of the race. Well, it's 4 seconds now Cope's going to be back on, and that is the first major mistake we've seen from Cope since the start of the race. We've seen some small errors here and there, but I think everybody can be forgiven. But that's the first one. We've gone to the gravel. Thankfully, he hasn't beached it in the gravel. Is that rain on my camera lens, or is that just what is my eyesight? I think it's just my eyesight. In fact, I might have to go to Specsavers after this one. I thought some more rain was coming for a brief second, and well, as Cope makes his way through turn 13 in towards 14, bringing it all back together. But whilst all that's going on, we'll get a replay of what exactly happened to Cope very shortly. Well, meanwhile, we do see here what is some more LMP2 battling, albeit surrounded by some GTPs, and that is James Ibram versus Tom Farr. Farr right now trying to chase down the 903, and you can see there the Effect Simulations machine in the white, blue and black, as that is a big run deep there from Farr. I think to try and release was a GTP making its way through, a lap up, and also on top of that, that's going to get very close, as that is one of our GT3s that is a lap down, being lapped by Farr, who goes very deep for DDK Racing Team, and they all go deep there, they're all running wide, as Joshua Wilson is trying to get himself back ahead of Farr after that instant earlier on, so therefore our drivers right now all try to avoid making contact with each other, and well, as they make the way on through, Wilson right now, I think, just try to play the game of, okay, I need to be patient, I need to tiptoe my way around these drivers here, not because they're driving badly, but because the circuit is not offering anybody any grip, regardless of what class you're in. The GT3s just have a little bit more, but even then they don't have that much, and it is definitely showing. But as they head across that timeline and down towards turn number 1, well, making the way into that braking zone, we're not going to see a change there between what is Wilson and Farr for the brief moment, as that's a big run wide there from Farr, and well, Ian Wilson's going to go to the inside, but you can see, look at the difference on the braking there, and well, Farr gets it stopped just in time. Wilson gets a much tighter line, but the problem is it's now switched back to a left-hander, and it's those differences in what is grip between the prototypes, which is proving frustrating, but surely Wilson now will get the run down towards turn 5. It's long enough here for the GTP to use its better top speed and acceleration. Onto the brakes they go, and we'll find him being made to sit outside, as that's a bumper in the middle of the road. I would imagine that has come off a GT3 at some point, given the size of that bumper. And well, in the end, Joshua Wilson does fight his way through, but has to do so very carefully. But meanwhile, what exactly happened to Thomas Cope only moments ago? Well, here's the replay, ladies and gentlemen. And as we take a look back, then this was down in towards turn number, what was 8, onto the brakes, and then the rear of the car just letting go there. I think just coming off the brake pedal a little bit too sharply, and the rear just snapping loose. But to be fair, doing very well to get it turned back on before the rest of the field really came on through. So Cope there with a small error, but not an error that's going to prove too costly potentially. I have to wait and see if he can catch up to Austin William Campbell. As we return to your live racing at once again, and still plenty of yardage to be cleared before the end of the day. Although we do apologise for the fact that he's, oh my goodness, well, hold up there. That is a big moment between some of our drivers. Not quite sure who that was being caught up, as our camera has switched to some further batting around the field. In fact, that's Michael Nye who ended up getting caught up there, and well, we caught a brief glimpse of it in the end, and then lost him, and now found him again. But I think being turned by one of his rivals, he does rejoin all the way down in P7 in the GT3 AM class, and well, a bit of a nightmare moment there as the laps continue to be added to the tally, and well, as he makes his way over the crest of turn number 15, that's going to be a frustrating one. He'll be trying to see what damage is on the car and whether that potentially changes the manoeuvrability. But from him, we look back to the other battle that we were catching wind of, and that's Tom Wester versus Casper Brotner, as we ride aboard and look back from the rear of the P4 GT3 Pro machine in the 44, and the Britain right now with Brotner inching as close as he possibly can. Well, it does look as though it is going to be the fight of V10 machinery versus 8-cylinder machinery, and that V8 there not quite able to stay with the lovely sonorous roar of that Audi engine under the rear of what is the Lamborghini Huracan Evo chassis. As he makes his way in towards turns 10 and 11. Well, right now they're all running together, as we do see while GTP drivers get a bit closer in the rear of the picture. That, I believe, is the fourth place at GTP, unless I'm mistaken, with Joe Newman. In fact, that's not Joe Newman there, that is one of our LMP2s, as I get myself corrected. I believe that's Austin Hereford, and Austin right now closing up on the GT3s, but no, you can't really play into this too much. But meanwhile, a move there to the inside into what is turn number 13, and that's Patrick Thompson making another move. That's on Joe Newman for P4 in the GTP class, and taking up that position there in the Ferrari 499, and Thompson continues to make his way gradually up through the field. He's been absolutely pushing as much as he possibly can up from corner to corner and lap to lap. Ryan Moles sets the fastest GTP lap now at 47.558, albeit I think there might have been some fast laps a little bit earlier on, and if so, our timing tower is a bit erroneous in that one. There comes Thompson to the line then. I think it is going to be a 44, yes, and whereas he does, that's more rain, surely not, as I look out my content booth window, and it is very black skies coming back over the circuit. So Portimão gives, then it takes, then it gives again. In the case of Jack Barker, it takes away some of his grip there for a brief moment, as he does let Patrick Thompson on through, and right now Joe Newman's going to be caught up behind what is the GT3 driver, and thinking you politely get out of the way because it's raining. I need some speed. You can see the puddle forming there on where's the exit of turn number 3. And, well, a bit of frustration for Newman, but now Barkle just lets him go. I don't think Barker doing anything untoward to be fair. I think Newman just in a frustrated place and understandably worried. He needs as much speed now to displace the water and keep that tyre temperature up. But this is becoming what is a very back and forth day of racing for the simple reason now that at any moment things could chop and change on this weather, and those conditions are definitely going to prove even more troublesome for each and every driver out there. As it makes way through, that's the car rejoining for a brief moment, and that is the Lamborghini we were riding on board with earlier. And I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that might be the car. I'm just trying to discern who it was. Was that Andy Archer? It may have been. Yes, it was. And Archer bringing it back together. So there's been a bit of an instant for Archer, and in the end going around, and that was at turn number 8 into 9. So Archer having a frustrating moment, but gets it back together just about. And, well, with that drops down to P5 in the GT3 Pro Class. It's happening each and every place out on circuit right now. And from moment to moment, whilst it is a little bit clear in terms of battling the GT3 class, I think it's going to be more about surviving this trip to Portimão than it is about winning at it, and winning could come just by simply being a survivor at this point. Once the drivers make the way on through, we look to the LMP2s. We haven't talked about them in a little while, and here is Helder Gonçalves with Matthew Cheverton, the GTP, getting closer and closer, with Øystein Hereford now 5 seconds clear at the front of LMP2. So Gonçalves at this point, I think now more in a position whereby he's having to focus on just delivering the race distance, and Cheverton behind was much he's closed up in the Aztec Racing at Porsche 963, where he'll have the run here down the start for this straight. Surely he's got to go for this, and I think he will. And he goes up the inside. Into the pit lane is Joe Newman, meanwhile. And, well, is this a decision to change tyres, or is it alternatively his pit stop, given the fact we are 12 laps in? So in terms of the amount of time that has expired, well, these changeable conditions are going to change how many laps we're going to see. But if I take my best guess, we have so far had about 25 minutes of racing, and we do apologise for our time at the top being out of order, given the fact we had those replays. There's a limitation we do have, but as our drivers make the way through, we will keep you abreast as to where we are timing wise roughly in this race and how many laps we are expecting once we've got a better bead on the situation. But right now, as it rains again here at Portimão, that rain continues to come, then it goes, and those black clouds, they look so thick out there. I can tell you one thing, it is going to be, if anybody's on the dry tyre, well, it's going to be a race whereby I think many a driver at this point is going to be thinking, well, I've surely got to go for wets here. Alternatively, if they were on wets at the start, they might be looking at putting a new set on soon in order to have that better grip towards the end. But of course the weather changes, and we have got a lot of cars out there. We had 45 starters, and I believe at this time we've still got the best part of what is 41 runners out there. They are all going to be burning that water off should the rain stop very quickly. But meanwhile, we've had another run wide, and that is Tom Weston going deep, and he's got Andy Archer going around the out. Well, in fact, Archer trying to go to the insider in there as Weston does bring himself back together. So Weston having a bit of an error, almost going off at turn number 11. The UKSimRacing team driver struggling in these conditions, it would seem. And, well, we don't have the full story as to what happened. We're seeing the aftermath as that's a little bit of a love tap there to the side of one of the LMP2s, and Weston's gone around. I think Weston's really struggling here, and perhaps it's time to come into the pit lane because he will be heading towards the halfway point of this race soon. And therefore, as he does take a bit of an excursion, goes to the rallycross line. Well, he brings it back together, gets off racing line. He's got to get through turn number 15, and I think right now for a lot of drivers the struggle is real here as that rain has picked itself back up. You can see that dry line thereabouts, but into the pit lane comes Weston. Does he? No, he doesn't. He decides not to. So Weston figured about it and then decides not. Well, some sort of call's been made, so Weston deciding to carry on a little bit longer, and now that is going to mean that he's going to have to get his head down for at least one more lap. And, well, could that be a lap too far? We'll have to wait and see. But as we say hello to Satinder Dinsa there, who asked in the YouTube chat, is the race timer correct? It's not. The lap count is, but the race timer itself is not. We do apologise for that, and we will keep you abreast where we are roughly in terms of time with the race, but as well as limitations. By us having the ability to do replays in post-round broadcast, we do sacrifice the timer every so often where the timer does decide that it wants to reset itself. But speaking of resetting things, let's reset our camera back towards the front of the field, and after getting into the lead by a couple of seconds, well, we can see Austin William Campbell right now in that lead, but look at Thomas Cope behind. The gap was 3.5 seconds when we last looked at them, and already William Campbell has not been able to check out. Instead, Cope is now checking in here as they make the way on the start finish straight onto another lap, roaring their way across that line and heading in towards what will be turn number 1. But as they do, the gap standing at 1 second here, and these drivers pushing each other still, and, well, both of them on the ragged edge of adhesion. and trying to stick it in what is the best possible place down circuit in order to be able to carry that lap speed. The lap times, as what is there, Sir Bottlejob has said, are getting a little bit faster in what is the YouTube chat, and it's a very good analysis there in the fact that we are seeing those lap times very gradually coming down, but the problem is here we can see them very quickly go up if that rain gets very strong, although the rain not there on camera, then it is again, so it is intermittent rain at certain points. That's a big run deep there for Austin Willie Campbell. Thomas Cope follows him all the way out onto the gravel that's been splayed across the outside of turn number 5, and whilst all this is going on, we have had a change of which GT3 AM leaders Richard Jones has had a huge moment at what is turn number 13, and what I believe has now got the car back together, but you couldn't make this up. I think right now, my gut feeling says, because we don't know what compound all our drivers are on, unfortunately we haven't got that information, but I would imagine that some drivers might have tried to start this race on a dry tyre on the basis it would get dry over the race distance, and those who did now finding with that sun spray of rain, well, it is meaning that dry compound is suddenly losing all its grip once again, and they're having to essentially rebuild it from scratch in terms of the grip. But as they make their way down the start-finish straight, that's Darren Sharples, the P8 Wood is GT3 Pro, catched up to your P3 GT3 AM of Jones as they make their way down towards turn number 1. In towards that braking zone they go. No change at the moment, but what we can do is take a look back at what exactly happened to Richard Jones and give you the story there. So taking a look back on this replay then, as Jones made his way up through turn number 11 in towards 12, takes a lot of apex curve, but you don't want to do that for that exact reason. The water will catch you out, tries to catch it one way, then the other, gets it stopped in, and to be fair to Jones, does get that car absolutely stopped perfectly, but of course then having to drop it off of a race sausage curb onto a major puddle. Well, for Jones, I think that would have definitely made the hairs on his back raise quite a bit. Definitely made mine here in the commentary booth. I don't know about you guys and girls at home, but what a brilliant bit of catch of the car there for Richard Jones. And as we return to the racing, ladies and gentlemen, well, Jones pushing onwards as much as he possibly can, and they're going from our replay as they make the way onwards. Still plenty more laps to be turned, and we're coming all the way back towards what will be the LMP2s meanwhile, as the LMP2 battle for P3 is starting to intensify with certainty, and it is Shilcock versus Cullen versus Ibrahim as they come out of turn number 15 on towards that timeline they go, and as they make the way across the timeline for them, this will be their 14th lap they have completed and gone to lap number 15 for them, and we will keep you abreast of that. So we are effectively practically at the halfway point of this race now. We're about 27-28 minutes into the race distance, and the battle for P3 in the LMP2 class is absolutely looking to be brilliant, as it's a big slide from Shilcock there, an even bigger slide. You can see there's only a very narrow dry line coming out of turn number 3 into 4, and Shilcock finding himself in the worst possible position as he made his way on through, and as they make the way down towards what is turn number 5, we'll move on the inside here. It's going to be Ibrahim up the inside of Cullen, and it's a big slide, too tight on the inside, and it's around for James Ibrahim, and once again, very eager, very brave, but in the end that bravery doesn't pay off, and Justin Stokiokas makes his way up through as well, and James Ibrahim now drops down to P6 after going all in for the move. Well, I think he'll feel as though if the circuit was just a little bit dry, he would have been able to get it to stick, and we would agree with that thought, but there, the rain caught him out and being hard on the brakes there, but sometimes you've got to go for it, but this time the 903 not making it land. As he makes his way out, turn number 8 in towards 9. And over the rise he goes. He'll get himself back up to speed very shortly. And whilst he thinks about going around in the drink, we're going to take a very quick sip of water. Indeed, it's time for us to take a drink. As we see Ben Cullen there making the move on Daniel Shilcock, literally as we're mid-gulp of water. Well, right now he'll be gulping in joy about the fact that he's been able to make that place up, and Daniel Shilcock will swallow his pride and look to try and find a way to get back on the attack as soon as possible as they head on through the corner, riding on board with the 270 driver from Tractics Racing, and heading in towards turn number 15. You can see that the dirty edge is causing the front end to wash out even more, plus also the wet track surface, and up the line they go in towards turn number 1 on that long run. As they power their way on down here, well, all you can see is spray there, and that little windscreen wiper not really doing enough to dispel the spray, but very shortly you will see it. Where's the traces there? Very close, very close under braking, and that's because Cullen's got the GT3 traffic in front of him, and I believe that's why the SAS racing cars, unless I'm mistaken, I think that might have been Brown, and that explains why suddenly Ben Cullen appeared out of nowhere. Suddenly Ben Cullen was a bit of a surprise there to Shilcock, but in the end they were able to negotiate that just about, and coming out to turn number 4, down towards turn 5. Well, now it's going to be Shilcock thinking, okay, well, I've got to be mindful of the fact there could be traffic in front as well, and if Cullen catches it at the wrong time, that's good for me until it's not, if I don't know where it is. But meanwhile, speaking of things we do know where they are, well, this is James Abraham looking up the inside of Justus Stakiokas, who goes back to the inside. This is going to be a repeat of the previous lap, will be a different driver trying to do what Abraham could not, and he does get it around, but it's a big tail slide there, and Stakiokas just manages to catch the car there. My goodness, my heart was pounding in my chest for that one, and I think Stakiokas on a different day would not have caught that, but that was definitely a bit of car control, as there it goes, and I was just singing his praises, and the commentators go strikes, and in the end, the O-Limit Racing driver goes around, he finds his limit there, in towards turn number 9, and well, it all goes wrong. In fact, turn number 8, let's get those corner numbers right, and as he heads in towards 9 right now, with the 747 driver there absolutely going sideways, but still, I think he'll think to himself, okay, I've got it recovered, let's go again. But definitely a difficult one, no doubt about it. But meanwhile, coming from one set of prototypes to another, well, in fact, we do have what is something that's happened to Daniel Shilcock. I think he's had a big moment, and Ben Cullen's found his way on through. I think there's been an altercation between the two of them. We'll try and get replay of that when we can. I think there's a bit of a story how the two have changed places, as we do see there Shilcock cutting his way up the inside of other GT3 drivers, just about making it through. But from them, let's come back to the battle for P3 in the GTP class, and you can see that Ryan Moles is holding on currently, but emerging right close behind him. Well, if you were playing the bingo card here of is that a Ferrari in the hands of Patrick Thompson, you'd be absolutely correct, because Thompson right now has absolutely come flying alive here as they make the way in towards what we turn number 11, albeit by 10 first, and Moles goes very deep into 10 and goes straight on there, completely losing the travel of the car under braking. But meanwhile, Patrick Thompson's not able to get the cleanest of runs, because he does catch up to the back of one of the Ford GT3s. Well, he does find his way through in the end, and immediately Moles now is going to go on the inside. Space is given there by what is the 746, and that is the car of what is none other, I believe that's 746 on the side. That might be mistaken. I think my eyesight's a little bit jittery. In fact, that is Andrew Fairley. I was correct to the 746, and our Ford GT driver, well, Ford Mustang GT3 driver, I should say, gets his way clear, and indeed lets what is these GTP drivers build up the speed as much as possible. But goodness me, a very hairy moment there for Ryan Moles, and it almost could have been just as bad for Patrick Thompson, but they both survived it, albeit swapping places along the way. But heading across that timeline to lap 18, we're back to your leaders then, and this is the overall lead battle between our GTPs of Austin William Campbell, the Effect Simulations driver at the front in the black, blue and silver machine, versus the Olympus Esports car of Thomas Cope. It is BMW versus Porsche, the battle of the two German marques in their prototypes, with a 14.5 second gap to Patrick Thompson in P3. And right now, with Austin William Campbell, you would imagine that all he will be thinking about here is keeping the car on what is that dry line, as the rain gently falls here in Portugal, and the rain seems to be a little bit more static now in terms of the fact it is being a bit more consistent. As soon as I say that, of course, we won't see any rain on the camera. Well, that is just what is ironic, and there's a bit more rain there. But weather analysis aside, I definitely won't be a weatherman in my lifetime. Once they come through turns 10 and 11, I can tell you that Austin William Campbell right now, when it rains, it pours. Oh my goodness, and that is a big shunt to the side of Cope's car, and a rejoin there from what is one of our GTP drivers, I do believe, and I believe that might have been the car of what is Joshua Wilson coming back on there, and Cope being caught blindsided by that. Thankfully, I think he feels like it might just be a minor scratch to the car and perhaps no suspension damage, but that could have been far worse, and he brings it right now down through what is turn number 14 and in towards what is 15, and as he makes his way on through in towards the right-hander, well, right now Cope, oh no, he's got that gap reset back to 1.7 seconds. He's got all the work to do again, and roaring on through and up towards what will be turn number 1 as they roar the way on down in towards the braking zone. It's a long run for a brief short while, and making his way on past while GT3's there. Well, right now for Cope, he's just got to get his head back in the game. But speaking of trying to get back in the fight, that is going to be Ryan M. Davies chasing after Nathan Foster. And the two Empire Motorsport drivers, they were running together in the different coloured machines, and what you can tell the difference is the fact that Davies is in what is the orange inserted colours. Meanwhile, for what is Foster, he's in the more traditional blue that we've seen Empire Motorsport in previous seasons. But the thing is, regards in tradition, well, the teammates are allowed to fight each other, and they normally show each other a lot of respect as well. And we're seeing that here as they make the way down towards turn number 5. As they do, well, things are going a bit silent on the GT3 front. We will cut some GT3s in a bit, but let's stay with some LMP2s and also some prototypes. We see James Abraham enjoyed a bit more battle. He really has been one of the drivers where the battling has found him all day today so far, albeit he has got Joe Newman, a GTP close behind him, and then Tom Farr and Justus Stakiokas, I should say, not mincing his name together. Well, those two trying to close up gradually in the rear of the picture, but we can see Newman there getting close, but nowhere near close enough to think about a move initially, but now he will get the overspeed in the Cadillac down the start-finish straight. That roar of, what is that, American 8-cylinder, absolutely tearing its way on past, and down towards turn number 1 they go, and Ibrahim leaving at that place there for P11 overall. But of course the points are scored in class, not an overall position. And well, speaking of class changes, into the pit lane from the leader, GT3 Pro class, comes none other than Atomic Esports' Jack Osborne, as Cy Anthony continues his crusade down the start finish straight into the lead of the GT3 Pro class. Casper Brotner's not too far behind him, so things are getting a little bit interesting in the GT3s across the classes, and the fact they are making their pit stops, their fuel tanks are starting to head towards the end of their capacities in terms of starter capacities. And also I think now it's also going to be that game or gambling in terms of which tyre compound do you run, because we are seeing some rain, then we're not. There's very clearly a dry line out there, but if you teeter off of that dry line, you very quickly find yourself going around if you're on a dry tyre, or even on a wet tyre that has not been fully brought up to temperature, and therefore it is becoming a bit of what is a danger game at the moment. And Cy Anthony there showing it through turn number 4, it'd be quite aggressive over what was the rise, and in the end the rear of the car almost let it go, albeit we briefly lose Cy Anthony to the ether, and then we find him up from the ether, and well, Casper Brotner trying to close up. Brotner that previous lap was almost 1.2 seconds faster than Cy Anthony. We're not quite sure if Anthony had any traffic on that lap. One thing's for certain is the Ford is closing, at least over the last lap. From them, we look to third place around the GT3 Pro class of Jack Barker as he tries to chase down the leaders. Currently the best part of 13 seconds behind Brockner, and a further 2.5 seconds to Anthony. But I think Barker at this point will be just looking to keep himself going all the way through to the end. And back in the Acura NSX Evo 22 for this season. And if you're wondering why he's running this car, well, I can tell you that he absolutely loves the electronics set on the car with regards to its traction control and its anti-lock braking system, and that's where he feels most comfortable in it, and that's why he's picked it for this season as he makes his way into turns 10 and 11. He roars his way through. Meanwhile, that is a spinning Lamborghini, and well, that's 1, 2, and there it stops just on where's the entry curb on the outside to turn 1. And well, I think there has been some sort of contact there for Tom Weston, because he's left the pit lane and then immediately had a bit of an instant. Can we get a replay to explain what's happened there to Weston? I think we can, and well, here is the replay, ladies and gentlemen. And this was coming out the pit lane then, so what exactly? Oh my goodness! Trying to get the power down, and immediately the car snapping loose into the wall, and in there just going around. I would suspect he's perhaps tried to go to a fresh set of tyres there, perhaps the slicks, and in the end just no grip, and that shunts the wall, really bringing his race to an abrupt end and back to the pit lane. But as we return to your live racing pictures, well, not a good move there for Weston, but still sometimes you've got to try when everything is looking lost. And well, as the drivers make the way on around, well, it does look as though at this point we are starting to see the spray reducing from behind a number of cars, and therefore that could be a sign that dry tyres, or where's the slicks, might be coming into a bit of a window now to be operated on, as that is a very, very tight window, a very big pinch of a window. If your name's Joe Newman, to try and squeeze yourself between a number of GT3s, including Michael Mai and also other Ford Mustangs there, and well, the number 2 going very deep, but it looks like Mai just getting the car stopped in time. And well, I think that was Steve Hughes with him there as well, Hughes in the Ford Mustang, but the two of them just about making it through that as the rain falls. But you can definitely see this circuit is dry, and look at that coming out of turn 14. That is a slick line practically, minus a little bit of rain, and as the drivers make the way on around, it looks as though right now all of our drivers, well, they're finding that if you're on the wet tyre, you might have to actually drive into a wet patch just to cool it down a little bit, but otherwise it is all now around tenterhooks here. Which tyre do you go to? And we are right in the pit stop window as well, so those who have yet to pit may suddenly find themselves actually in a prime position with regards to the fact they may be able to gamble going to the dry tyres. It's a bit of a biff to the back of one of the drivers in front. I believe that's Mai being tapped on the rear by one of our Effect Simulations drivers in the LMP2. Couldn't quite tell who that was, but I can tell you there was contact. That was none other than the 903 Styles James Ibrahim making a bit of contact to the back of Mai, and well, it's going to be too wide here between Hughes and Mai as they make the way through turn 4. That's a very brave move from Hughes, but he moves up into P6 of the GT3M class on the circuit, and sometimes you've got to be brave, but in the Ford Mustang they're just planted the throttle and saying, right, we're going to go for it here, whether it likes it or not, and in the end, making it count, and Mai not being able to respond to that down into turn 5. But whilst all this is playing out, let's go a little bit further down in fact, up the order of the GT3s and look to what is your GT3 AM leader, and he's missing a front bumper. That's that bumper we were telling you about that we saw at turn 5, the best part of what was about 13 laps ago in terms of the laps our GTPs have done, and that is the front bumper of James Foster's McLaren, because the DCW racing car makes its way through turn number 15, minus a front bumper, but it looks very happy out there, minus a front bumper, it must be said, and we're leading the class's race by 7.4 seconds and not looking back at this time, and Foster is flying out there compared to his rivals. It looks though he might have invested correctly in terms of his tyre choice early on, as meanwhile, looking at just a bit further down the road, we do see here what is a bit of a battle between John Davis and Andy Archer. Davis into the pit lane and Archer being released there to carry on. So John into the pit lane, and well, for Archer it is all going to be now about putting some more laps together here and still carrying on. But as our drivers make the way through, and we say hello to Ken C, well, all the drivers here absolutely are trying to deliver as best they can be. And well, Tom Weston there in the YouTube chat talking about what was that spin coming out the pit lane and confirming he'd gone to dry tyres. So it was as our suspicions suspected, and therefore we are potentially inching towards dry tyre territory, but whoever gambles on it, it's going to be a very nerve-wracking opening couple laps of the pit lane, as we did see there a swap between Justin Stakielkas and Tom Farr, and Stakielkas gets into what was P5 on circuit, but then Ben Cullen has stayed out there, so he's dropped to P6 to Stakielkas with Farr right behind him, and these two, well, surely they've got to be thinking about going to the dry tyre here. If they don't and they stay on the wet, well, it will be the more comfortable tyre initially, but if this circuit continues to dry and we don't see any more rain, this could suddenly take a big turn. As speaking of turns, Austin William Campbell still leads by what is 10 seconds, but it's not over Thomas Cope, it's over Patrick Thompson, and meanwhile Cope is in the pit lane. In fact, he comes to his pit stall there, he's in, and he's gone early, I would presume. This is going to be a gamble to go to the dry tyre. You see the car's up on the jacks there, so he is changing the tyre compound over, and I suspect he's decided it could be the way to get ahead here, and by going a lap early, the downside of this will be he will be slower on paper when he comes out the pit lane, but the flip side of the coin being that once he gets that pace, if there's not a reaction from his rivals too soon, then Cope could gain multiple seconds of time and potentially leapfrog on strategy here. But meanwhile, whilst we're waiting to see how that plays out, separated over the course of an entire lap, well, meanwhile Daniel Shilcock chasing down Ben Cullen, and the Effect Simulations driver being followed by what is the 270 as we ride on board here with Shilcock, and indeed staying on board for this battle. And behind, well, you do have Amrit Rajikosh as they do make the way up into this braking zone, albeit the GTP driver's not close enough to get involved. And Shilcock there just getting a little bit too close in earnest through turn number 13 to 40. You can tell that the Track 6 Racing driver feels like he's got a bit more pace here in Wizzy's hairpin corners, but the problem is when you get that close to another car, you've got to back on the throttle. You can't get the throttle back on, and that's what these LMP2 machines need. They need you to re-engage the throttle when you get to apex, because that is how you get the grip and the rotation in the car. But the problem is when you have to back off completely, the car just simply goes, well, there's no more downforce effects, it's just going to slide all over the place. And as they make the way down towards turn number 1, well, now they'll be separated by a GT3. That's the number 99 from SAS Racing, and I believe that is none other than what is Richard Jones, who's just minding his own business right now, which he's got every right to, and he'll let Shilcock go there on the inside into turn number 3, but Shilcock 9, that battle is not going to come back to him anytime soon. And meanwhile, Jones now has pretty much let the entire field around him go with all his prototypes here. Well, what they say, like London buses, it's when you wait an eternity for one and they all come at once. Well, with the prototypes here, definitely they're all coming at once there for the Britain as they head down towards the braking zone for turn number 5. And well, through all this, it's getting very squirmy between drivers as it's Harold Stratatus trying to make some progress there. As you can see him heading up towards what will be turn number 7. And in the lead of what is this little intermingling of prototypes with Daniel Shilcock behind him, and then a lap down machine just a bit further back. But from them, whilst they all continue to nurse their way through, and you can definitely see what is there a very dry circuit form, and it is a circuit now where the dry tyre's got to be the investment at this point. If you've been able to stay on what has been the dry tyre since leaving the pit lane, you will now be rewarded, surely. Well, we've got more pit stops coming as Cy Anthony stays out. In fact, I believe Cy Anthony has served his pit stops, so Cy Anthony has suddenly sprung himself into lead the GT3 Pro class, and this is another pit stop to come. Maybe I can think of is he's had a relatively short stop, only 14.4 seconds, so has he gambled on staying on the wet tyre if he started on that? Because if so, that wet tyre might find itself in a very nasty place towards the end. In terms of where we are race time wise, again, we apologise for the fact the time on the top center of your screen is inaccurate. We believe timing wise that we are, given we're on lap number 24, if I had to do some quick mathematics, we are about 45 minutes into this this race now. So we've only got 15 minutes or so to go, and therefore it does mean now that our drivers are in the closing stretches, those fuel tanks will be pushed to the limit. Obviously with the wet conditions, we will see a lot less fuel being used, but we suspect there will have to be a fuel pit stop for everybody, and some drivers who may need to do tyre changes as well. And speaking of changes, well, we look now to what is your GT3 AM lead after all the pit stops are done. Well, at least he's leading right now, and that is Richard Jones for SAS Racing, but he's got one problem. He's got a very hungry Ford behind him, and that is the Ford of Steve Hughes, as we see a car rejoin there for going off. That's Christian Malcharek, who's taken a trip to the sand, coming through turn number 3 and towards 4. You'd see there Hughes back it off and letting the gap grow towards 1.1 seconds over Jones. So Jones back in control of this, having started on pole in the GT3 AM class here today. He's trying to hold on as best he can, but it looks as though here it's not quite working out at this time, as meanwhile we had a bit of an incident for Jack Barker, who's gone round, and that is on the exit of turn number 5. I think we're having a bit of drama for his Barker. I believe also we found where Jack Osborne has had to retire for this race in the most recent laps. Not quite sure what's happened to Osborne. Can we potentially get a replay of what's happened to Jack Osborne? I think we might be able to, ladies and gents, but Osborne's race has gone very backwards very quickly. I think we might get double bill replays here in regards to Osborne and Jack Barker, but let's start off with what we believe may have happened to Jack Osborne and brought his race to a conclusion, because he was at one point leading in what was the GT3 Pro class, and here is the replay. And in terms of what happened to Osborne then, so this was the wonderful Lamborghini Huracan Evo making its way over the crest. Oh, a big snaky moment, and in the end the front just letting go and into the barrier. And from that point, well, Osborne pretty much entrenched there, and the car having to be towed, and that's heartbreak and what was a leading race in the GT3 Pro class, and for Osborne it all ended in tears. As we return to your race, and I don't think we're going to be able to get the replay of Barker immediately. We may get that a little bit later, but we definitely now found out the story as to what happened to Osborne with that big spin. And well, time continues to run out of this race, as into the pit lane is Austin William Campbell. So he was running as, we believe, what was your leader in the GT3 class, but he's now going to have to sacrifice that. Ryan Moles has yet to pit. Patrick Thompson started from the pit lane, I believe, or had to go into the pits early. So therefore, Thomas Cope right now, unless Thompson can go the distance, you're looking here at Thomas Cope, who will be your race leader in the GTP class, and surely it's going to give him a huge gap because Moles is into the pit lane. Thompson's got to come in soon. I can't imagine he's going to go to the end. So William Campbell is now leaving the pit lane, and well, as they make the way down, there's more rain. There's more rain coming now, for crying out loud. 1 minute it goes dry, the next minute the rain comes, but right now Thomas Cope is back into P2. Austin William Campbell just left the pit lane, but there's the delta. Remember, before Cope pitted, it was a 2-second gap. After the pit stops, by going to what was the dry tyre and going early, giving himself the best part of 4 to 5 laps, winning, he has managed to overturn that gap to a 2-second advantage. In fact, 3 seconds there, because Austin William Campbell's now got to get his tyres up to temperature, and that is the undercut. It's a gamble, but Cope, I think, is going to make this gamble pay off, so long as he can keep the temperature of the tyres all the way to the end, and that is going to be the big problem here, because Austin William Campbell's gone round! He's gone round, and that immediately puts a huge pin in the balloon of what could be his aspirations to float up towards the lead as he rejoins, and it's going to be very close there, not seeing the Ford coming up behind him, and the old dudes in cards Ford Mustang does take evasive action, but Austin William Campbell, you can understand, I think right now absolutely fuming at his error coming out of turn number 5, and once he gets it back together, well, goodness me, this race right now is taking a turn for the worse. Thomas Cope was in the sand earlier, and now Austin William Campbell's gone around, and he's going to have to go chase him with a 13-second gap to Cope, and that is a long gap to try and bring down in such a short time. Thompson's in the pit lane here, and what is Thompson doing at this point? He's still making his way towards his stall. And surely with Cope being what is the exit at turn 14, as I look out my commentary booth window, I can tell you that Cope right now is going to retake this lead unless Patrick Thompson decides to put the splash of dash of fuel in. It's going to be very close, but here is Cope then making his way on through, and this is going to be a retaking a lead here as he crosses that timeline. The lap times are coming down tremendously, down to the 38s now for Cope. He crosses that line. Patrick Thompson is leaving his pit stall, but there is the delta, and Cope is back into lead of GTP, and this is looking to be going one way. It's a very tentative moment there for Patrick Thompson. He comes on out, and in the end it just comes out safely around the rivals in front and behind him, and well, as he does so, Austin William Campbell, who's been relegated to P3 as a result of that spin, well, now he's going to have to try and breathe down the neck of the Ferrari 499P of Thompson, as he has not got long left, and what I don't think he's going to be able to close the gap down to Cope before this race is over. We'll have to see, as meanwhile, as they roar the way on through, we've got got a bit more fighting going on between some of our other drivers, and particularly in the GT3 class, where things are getting very, very tasty now. And this is the battle still for the lead of what is the GT3. So in fact, we've had a change because Richard Jones was leading. I think there's been an error for Jones, and here is Foster ahead of what is Sharples into Dix. The battle of the McLaren and the Ford there not being between the GT3 AMs, but instead the Pro Sharples cutting his way ahead of Hughes in what is the Mustang, and Jones all over the back of this. So these two swapping places right now. As meanwhile, whilst all this has been going on, there has been an instant for Patrick Thompson that has released Austin William Campbell into P2 off camera. And I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon, given the fact we will want to stay focused on some racing rather than go back to replays. And well, as the drivers make the way through, well, right now Steve Hughes absolutely, I think, here knowing what's in front of him and knowing that it is a golden opportunity to potentially try to take GT3 and victory, as we do see Darren Sharples going up the inside here down the start for the straight versus Foster. Foster's got that front bumper back on. They were able to fast repair it in the pit lane, so it will be equally repaired machinery. And well, Sharples now clears out the way, and it will be a freeway fight for what will be the GT3 and win. In the fact, it's only 2 seconds between Foster, Hughes and Jones. The closest the battles on the circuit for victory as it currently stands, and we absolutely love to see it, as it is a McLaren versus a Ford versus an Acura. 3 different manufacturers as well, and GT3 absolutely diverse as you want. But as they head out to turn number 4, we can see there Thomas Coach is making his way out the inside of all of them, not wanting to play a role in this, just wants to simply sneak on through, and all the drivers coming on down here into the braking zone. And just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already and you are in the YouTube chat, well, if you do want to take part in the 1-month giveaway for what is a VRS subscription, firstly be subscribed to the UKSimRacing YouTube channel, and then do type into the chat the letters VRS in on the virtual racing score. If you do that, you'll be entered into what is the giveaway draw, and we will be doing that draw at the end of the broadcast today, after the racing has concluded and before we potentially come to our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. But as the drivers make their way on through and rolling the way in towards what will be turns 9, 10 and then into 11. Well, right now Foster, Hughes and Jones equidistant from each other, no change. And well, we briefly do take a look meanwhile to a closing battle behind, and that is the fight for what is P3 in the LMP2 class between Farr and Stakielkas, with Ben Cullen a further 4 seconds behind. So it is getting close between all the drivers out there at this time. Everyone absolutely driving it to the limit, and well, absolutely brilliant race between them, no doubt about it. But the thing is, only one can become victorious over the distance. Everyone trying to keep it together as much as they possibly can. But we've still got some time left in this race, and based on lap times we're doing right now, we are expecting our GTP leader to be doing in the region of 33 to 35 laps, somewhere around there. So we're keeping our eyes on that. It does mean that we have about the best part of 7 to 8 minutes of racing left, if my mental mathematics is correct. And well, as that rain very gently falls on the circuit, it's not enough to completely cause what is the conditions to change, but it does mean that right now we are continually and seeing what is that risk factor in the fact a lot of drivers on dry tyres, but they've got to itch their way around. As there's rain falling on the exit of 3 into 4, you can see that there clearly as day on camera. And meanwhile, what you can also see clearly as day is that is going to be a move up the inside of Foster by Ryan Moles in the GTP class for what is a P7 in class there, just cutting up the inside of Foster. I don't think Foster having really a response at this time and looks to be struggling that Porsche 963 by comparison with Moles, who seems to be flying out there currently. And well, Moles having a much longer pit stop compared to his rivals, the best part of a minute compared to Foster's what was in the end only 9-second stop, staying on the same set of tyres and just putting in the fuel to get to the end. And well, that definitely has not worked out for Foster, it would seem, or at least at the moment it hasn't worked out. We're looking just a bit further up the road. There is your leader in the LMP2 class. Will be surrounded by other class machinery right now, and that is Øystein Herford, who's continued to lead this race by a comfortable 8-second gap. Well, in fact, 11-second gap, I should say, getting the maths correct. And as he makes his way on through turn number 15, Øystein Herford right now in a very happy place in control of this race, no doubt about it. And well, Moles may have got past what was Foster only moments ago, but Foster immediately back on the back of him here as they head down the start finish straight. But you can see there's the proof that Foster is still on the wet tyres, that he started this race and he's trying to cool them down, and that's why he's just got no pace through the corners by comparison, because there's no life left in the tyre. The tyre's absolutely boiling hot as they make the way on around, and as they do, well, more lap times to come on in from some of our drivers, including what is some flying laps, and in particular Jack Barker doing a 47.43. So suddenly in the GT3 class, well, Barker's the fastest of everybody by the best part of 4 to 5 seconds. He's in P4. Unfortunately, he's 33.5 seconds off of Science in the class lead in the GT3 Pro class, but you'd imagine if he can keep up this pace for a couple of laps, he could be on the back of Andy Archer for what will be the podium finish right at the end of the race. So that is going to be an interesting one as well, as the Acura driver right now is absolutely flying out there as he makes his way on down. And well, as the drivers come on through, well, from them, in terms of lap times at the moment, is there anything else we can discern? In fact, one thing that is surprising, we come back to Oisin Hereford. I think he's still on wet tyres because his previous lap was a 46.86. He didn't have too much traffic on that lap. Meanwhile, Tom Farr in P3, a 40.5. Ben Cullen in P4, a 40.4. It would seem that they're on dries, and meanwhile, Hereford is on what is some very old wet tyres. And if so, well, that would mean that right now Helder Gonçalves is a way back, no doubt about it, 12 seconds. But could we see a charge? Well, Farr and Cullen would have to absolutely roar their way through in order to be able to close this gap down in some time. But Hereford will definitely be looking a little bit vulnerable. And as the drivers make the way on around through turn number 14 in towards 15, well, right now for Hereford, he'll be just looking to hold on and knowing that time is gradually coming his way. And that's the feel of this race now. We are in those closing stages. But speaking of closing stages, it's closed up here in the battle for what is P3 in the GT3 AM class. And Rob Windsor has just found his way past this man, Richard Jones, who we're riding on board with. And Jones there, a little bit of a slide coming out of turn number 11. I think there's a bit of a story to that in terms of how the move was made. But speaking of moves being made, we've also got a move here down the start for this straight, and that is the GT3, and that is Barker just getting ahead on the exit of turn 15 versus Andy Archer. So changes for the podium spots in the GT3 class. Barker up into P3 in GT3 Pro. Meanwhile, in GT3 AM, it's now Windsor making it into P3 ahead of Jones, and well, it's now going to be a double podium potentially for McLaren in the AM class, albeit interrupted by one Ford in the form of Steve Hughes. But as they continue to make the way through, we've only got about 6 minutes left on the clock at this point, and therefore not many laps left in it. And our drivers are now, those who are on wet tyres that they've been running since the start of the race, or indeed any tyre compound they've been running since the start of the race, they'll be looking to hold on as long as they can. And well, those that cannot, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. And well, speaking of nightmares, I think we're going to see a change here for P2 in the LMP2 class. He looks one way, then he looks the other. Tom Farr's got so much more grip by comparison, and well, trying to look for the move, but he's going to be interrupted here. It's going to be too wide between himself and what is the 905 of Austin William Campbell, and they come together for a brief moment, and in the end, well, Campbell's able to right the car on the side of what is Farr, but that's going to frustrate Farr to no end. It will frustrate both of them, but Farr in particular, because he knows he's right on the back of Helder Gonçalves, who is on very, very old wet tyres. And right now, Farr wants to try and take that run up, so he'd love to chase down Hereford, but I don't think he's going to find it as the rain falls a little bit more. And as they roared the way on through in towards what is turns 12 and 13, well, right now Farr's closing up very quickly. You can see, look how much time he's taken. Also, of course, being aided by what is Helder Gonçalves. They're being passed to the inside by the GTP driver, but as they come down to turn number 14, well, Farr's now just got to very carefully approach this. He doesn't need to rush this. He's got the laps, he's got the time, and as they make the way through turn 14, he's got the line as well. He just needs the overspeed here coming out the final corner, and it will do the rest itself. He doesn't need to do anything crazy, and you can see that holding where's that inside, a little bit elbows between the two of them. You can see that Gonçalves does not want to give Farr any room. They're rubbing doors, they're rubbing paintwork, and as they make the way down towards turn number 1, the spray hides them for a brief moment, but Farr's going to be on the inside, but there's not enough grip, or is there? He goes away. Gonçalves tries to hold it around the outside, but in the end runs out wide. Brilliant two-wide race, and Gonçalves almost loses it there as he rejoins, but catches the car, and Tom Farr in the end will say what you will about his race earlier on, but that was brave, it was bold, and it was absolutely brilliant. And Farr up into P2 in the LMP2 class. Can he close down Hereford? I don't think so, unless Hereford loses 7 seconds a lap over what is the remaining time in this race, but it's going to be close. And well, as they roar the way towards turn number 5, Farr's going to keep on charging. He's not going to give in here, and we absolutely applaud him for it. But from what is our LMP2's fighting, we come to what is our lead battle in the GT3 AM class, and that is Foster, and Foster's round. He loses the lead of the class, and Windsor comes on through. It releases Hughes as well, and Foster having a big spin there, and in the end the car just let it go on old tyres of the James Foster. Also releases Richard Jones. It happens once again, a leader being demoted right towards the end of the race, and I think we've still got a bit of time left. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes. That's going to be heartbreak for Foster for DCW Racing in a very well controlled race as Ben Cullen makes his way past Helder Gonçalves there in what is P3 now for the LMP2 class. Gonçalves has just got no grip left whatsoever, and indeed a lot of drivers now falling off the proverbial cliff in terms of tyre life, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see even more here before all is said and done. But meanwhile, we look to Thomas Cope, your race leader right now, who is still holding on. He's still matching the lap times of Austin William Campbell. Patrick Thompson is 4 seconds a lap faster, but the problem is he's down in P3 and 24 seconds off the leader. So right now Cope, all he needs to do is play it smart and not make any mistakes before this race is over. And as he roars his way on through, and we say hello to Simon Bamber in the Twitch chat who says it's wet conditions out there, and we're coming down towards turn number 5 right now. Cope surely got to know that all he needs to do now is get to that checkered flag. It sounds really obvious, but in these conditions, it's not that easy. As meanwhile, Casper Brotner being passed there by Jack Barker down the start-finish straight. Barker now up into P2 in the GT3 Pro class, and well, he has got the best part of 8 seconds goes down. Could Barker potentially steal away the GT3 Pro victory? If he does, this is going to be a lightning charge here from Barker. He's got some traffic in front of him. In fact, he's going faster than the LMP2s right now. I think that's Gonzalez, who's still struggling as they make the way along. Well, right now, Barker's not got long left. I suspect he's only got this lap plus one more before the checkered flag, so if he's going to pull this off, he's going to have to go a long way to do so, and I don't think it's going to be that easy. But right now, Barker is absolutely flying in his pursuit of other drivers, and he's passed Brotner. He passed Andy Archer earlier up into P2, and even if he finishes P2 now, I think there's going to be a big grin on his face, no doubt about it. But as he makes his way on for a big slide there once again for LMP2 driver Barker, just simply saying, you know what, I'm going to come on through here and make life a bit easier for you. But meanwhile, speaking about battles that are not easy, this is Christian Maltret and Ryan Molson P4 in the GTP class, almost a lap down on what is the class leader, and heading in towards what is turns 1 and 2. Well, meanwhile, there is your leader making his way across the line, and I believe, as I'll count my content if we know, that might be a white flag waving, and that is going to be Thomas Cobe, who now goes on to the final lap of overall racing here, as meanwhile off camber Patrick Thompson and Austin William Campbell swap places, and I believe Austin William Campbell's been involved in a further spin, and that's why Patrick Thompson's been able to find his way through. So therefore, it does mean now that Cobe making that progress. Oh, he goes straight on. There's no grip. There's no grip whatsoever. And Cobe completely struggling there to complete the corner. Surely not. Surely he's not going to lose this on the final lap of the race, and it's all going to go to Patrick Thompson, because if so, Thompson will have completely pulled out a blinder here on strategy, and in the game of survival, Cope will have fallen short literally at the 99% mark. He's only got one lap to go here. He's got to be able to bring this home now. We'll have to wait and see, because these laps are getting even more terrifying, and it could be said in the GT3 class, meanwhile, that's your lead in the GT3 AM class, passing your P5 GT3 Pro driver of Nathan Anstis. Rob Windsor makes another place. Steve Hughes, meanwhile, is nowhere to be seen. He's fallen away from that battle, but cleared Foster, so therefore it's looking as though here the GT3 class battling is calming down. As we look to Sean Crowley Swash for a brief moment, as the anti-racing driver is just trying to stay away from Tom Weston, who's chasing after right at the close. But as they make the way down the dip and up the rise in towards turn number 12, it's an absolute roar from all the drivers here. And well, meanwhile, the one driver right now is just trying to hold on for a little bit longer. Sean Crowley Swash trying to do the same. Well, here he is, ladies and gentlemen, and as he makes his way on through what will be the last major corner, we believe this is the last lap. And if it is, so Thomas Cope, it's been up, it's been down, but throughout the entirety of the race, he's held his ground. And Thomas Cope will take victory at Portimão in the season opener overall and in the GTP class in particular for season 3 of the championship, and it will be a sizable gap before your next drivers come through. We can see there it's going to be Patrick Thompson making his way around for P2 here in the GTP class. Congratulations to him as he crosses that timeline, and then it will be Austin William Campbell P3 just behind as he brings his race to an end, a frustrated end to his race. In the LMP2 class, it's Oystein Herford who holds on just about by 2.5 seconds ahead of Tom Farr, and Ben Cullen's not too far behind either. That's your top 3 in the LMP2s, before you do have coming to his finish line very shortly what will be your GT3 Pro leader. He's been absolutely unstoppable all race, albeit Jack Osborne's error costing Osborne the opportunity to win. And Cy Anstey returns to winning ways in the season opener for the GT3 Pro category, ahead of Jack Bark, who misses out in by 1.6 seconds in a lightning and legendary drive, but it wasn't enough, and it will be then Casper Brotner who will be your third place finish in the GT3 Pro class there in the Ford Mustang, as he comes on home there in a solid drive to the third place spot on the podium. We've got Rob Windsor to come on through, and what a drive here from the 812 driver. I don't think he's going to quite believe it. He's pulled off a GT3 and win here in a brilliant race-long battle between himself, Hughes, Foster, Conley and Jones, but he will take the GT3 and win, and then it will be Steve Hughes who comes on through in the Ford Mustang here to take P2. As he makes his way out the final quarter, he's not under any pressure here other than just to simply nurse the car to the line, and he'll do exactly that as he becomes your GT3 AM runner-up. And then we will have James Foster coming through to complete the GT3 AM podium just ahead of James Conley, and what a frustrating end to the race for Foster. leading, but in the end a spin cost him dear and he never quite recovered from it, but still finished on the podium. It will mean a lot to him, but he'll know today victory escaped him when he had it in his hands. And we can see there John Davis a bit further back, finishing just behind Michael Meyer, and Will Davis in the end P6 of the GT3 AM class, and happy with that one, no doubt about it, as he flashes lights to the spectators and the sponsors and the team. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen, as Thomas Cope makes his way down the start-finish straight in a car that definitely today has served him very well, celebrating with some donuts in the wet. I don't know how much time he's actually got to do those donuts. I wouldn't be surprised if the car ends up on the rims before he's completed 1 or 2 turns, but still he'll be happy with that as he gets it away from the wall, knowing the Olympus Esports budget isn't going to cover a wrecked Porsche 963 too often. But meanwhile, we do look to Øystein Hereford on his cool-down lap, and what a drive as well from the Effect Simulations driver to bring it home on tyres that definitely were well past their use-by date. And Tom Farr and Ben Cullen, they were close, but they weren't close enough. And meanwhile, in that GT3 Pro class, of course, Cy Anstey there really in a race of his own in many a regard, and in the end in a strategy of his own, and that's how he made it count as he comes into the pit lane with Rob Windsor. In the end, finding himself right in the thick of it throughout the entirety of the race, but he was the one who managed to keep his cool, keep calm, and carry on the McLaren 720S, and that's why he's your GT3 AM winner. And what a drive between all of our drivers there. Congratulations to all the drivers who finished that race. What a race for those conditions for the season over, and a special congratulations to our podium finishers and our class victors. And let's go through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to the results, and we do bring them up with regards to what is your overall results first and foremost. As we can see there, Thomas Cope taking the overall victory for Olympus Esports after 34 laps in round 1 of Season 3 of the UKSimRacing Multiclass League, sponsored by Virtual Racing School, or VRS in short. And the number 64 driver taking that victory by 16 seconds over Williams Sim Racing Academy's Patrick Thompson. P3 went the way of Austin William Campbell for Effect Simulations Club Sport, and then it was Christian Maltret and Ryan Moles completing the top 5 for the GTPs and overall. Further down the running order, in P8 was your LMP2 Victor Øystein Hereford there for Effect Simulations Carbon. The LMP2 is finishing a lap down in the end, but what a brilliant drive, and indeed a very intriguing drive in the first half of the race where the LMP2s were as quick as the GTPs for the most part, but Hereford holding on ahead of Tom Farr and Ben Cullen with the DDK Racing Team and Effect Simulations drivers both enjoying podium finishes of their own. P4 in the LMP2 class, P12 overall is Justus Stakiokos. It is brilliant battle between himself and Helder Gonçalves, but Gonçalves in the end behind the over-limit racing driver, and the Track 6 racing car just didn't have the tyre life to get it to the end. In the GT3s, it was a P18 overall for your GT3 overall winner, Cy Anthony, the Dragon Razio driver, completing a run to GT3 Pro victory there, ahead of Made for Races Jack Barker and Casper Brockner, with the trio completing what was your GT3 Pro podium. And further on down that order, with the GT3s finishing 3 laps down the overall winners, well, we did see there what was Andy Archer finishing P4 in the GT3 Pro class in a very close fight between Archer and Brockner. And we did see interrupts in the flow of GT Pro drivers, your GT3 AM winner Rob Windsor for UKSimRacing Irvine, who passed his teammate Nathan Anstis in the closing laps. We saw second place finish in the GT3 AM class Steve Hughes at Anti Sports, ahead of James Foster for DCW Racing, with that spin costing him the win. And then round off the top 5 of the GT3 AMs was James Conley for UKSimRacing Button and SAS Racing's Richard Jones. It's been some time since we've seen Jones on the grid, but he returns to a top 5 in the GT3 AM class, and you're thinking today that it could have been a podium if not a win, but then again things did not quite go his way. In terms of commiserations and what was unfortunate retirements, well, we did see in the end some unfortunate retirements for a number of drivers, including, I do believe, what was Geraldo Strutatas, Daniel Shilcock, Jack Osborne, also there to Joshua Wilson, and further on down the order there as classified, but they'll be classified as non-finishers, also Sam Sherwood, Emil Koopmans, James Acklam, Matthew D.R. Morris, and Simon A. Bamber. So 45 starters, and in the end a grand total of 36 finishers, ladies and gentlemen. And as we come onto the individual classes, starts off with the GTP class, and here we can see, well, in the end, it was an absolutely strong and hard drive for Thomas Cope, the Olympus Esports driver, taking that victory over Patrick Thompson. The Williams Sim Racing Academy driver having a back and forth in the end of Austin William Campbell, and strategy being the difference between the trio, and Cope gambling on pitting early, but in doing so, when we started to see those drying conditions, the 64 driver getting the gamble just right. Christian Maltrek enjoying a great P4 finish there off of the podium, just a second ahead of Ryan Moles at the close, and their back and forth nip and tuck between the Privateer and Protect Motorsports driver, with Matthew Sheraton P6 for Aztec Racing a lap down, but ahead of the Empire Motorsport trio of Joe Newman, Nathan Foster and Ryan Davies, and then 2 laps down to Amrit Rajit Ghosh, who completed your top 10 finishes in the GTP class. Commiserations for the retirees of Geraldo Strutatas, Joshua Wilson and Sam Sherwood. Then going on to the LMP2 class, And here we can see it was Oystein Hereford taking victory for Effect Simulations Carbon by 2.3 seconds over DDK Racing Team's Tom Farr, and Ben Cullen was in the end what was only a further 6/10 off. Incredibly close. It was a close-knit run race all the way through, but Hereford gambling on the strategy and making it matter most, with Justus Stakiokas and Helder Gonçalves completing the top 5 there for Over Limit Racing and Tractix Racing. Also on the lead lap of the LMP2s was James Ibram for Effect Simulations Club Sport. A frustrating race today, but definitely one of the stars of the show with his do-or-die overtaking moves, and most of them working off very well, but that turn 5 hairpin definitely catch him out multiple times. Ryan Walker was a lap down in, but playing it safe at Altitude 3M Esport, and we had the retirements of was Daniel Shilcock, Emil Koopmans, James Acklam and Simon Bamber. Then coming to the GT3, starting with the GT3 Pro Class, and here we can see your victory going to Cy Anstey for Dragon Rezio by 1.6 seconds over Made for Races Jack Barker, who in the end, the strategy needed one more lap for him to sneak away with the victory, but still what a drive there to charge his way to P2 after being the best part of what was 20 seconds down at one point and just closing that gap down by 4 to 5 seconds a lap. Old Dudes in Cars is Casper Brotner, P3, a further 13 seconds behind, and then Andy Archer just missing out on the podium, but still well clear for Atomic Esports of UKSimRacing Irvine's Nathan Anstis, who completed your GT3 Pros on the lead lap. It was a lap down to Sean Cranley Swash, Ansi Sports, having a solid race and some good points on the board. Tom Weston, meanwhile, a frustrating race for DDK Racing Team, really a baptism by fire today. And then Old Dudes in Cars is Darren Sharple's P8, with a further 2 laps down to Andrew Fairley, in P9 for DDK Racing Team. Then we had the retirements of Jack Osborne from the lead of the race for Atomic Esports and Matthew Morris for Racy Games. Then coming on to the GT3 AM class, last but by no means least, we did have there Robert Windsor, your victor of the GT3 AMS UKSimRacing Irvine by 15 seconds over Steve Hughes and James Foster, rounding off the podium there. With the Ansi Sports and the DCRA Racing drivers both leading the race at some point, but it was Rob Windsor who led it at the most important point, and that was at the checkered flag. A further 4 seconds to James Conley at P4 there for UKSimRacing Button. Definitely having a drive like Jensen Button today in the wet. A very consistent drive, but not quite able to finish on the podium. And then Richard Jones for SAS Racing completing the top 5. John Davis was P6 for the wrong stuff. The final lead lap finisher of the GT3 AMS. It was a lap down to Daniel Pays for Old Dudes in Cars, and also to Michael Myler for Team LSR in a challenging race today, no doubt about it. Still one he'll learn from in the number 2. It was a further lap down to Alex Brown in his debut for SAS Racing. Still plenty to learn from. It's all about a learning experience, whether you're in the pro classes or the AMS. And a further lap down, 3 laps down for Matt Edmondson for UKSimRacing Button. But all the GT3 AMS finishing the race. So that concludes our run through of the race results, ladies and gentlemen, and what a race it was from start to finish, no doubt about it. But of course, now that does beg one of the big questions, which is with regards to our giveaways and in terms of who has won in those giveaways. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with the giveaway winners for what was our raffle draws of our drivers from this round, and we start off with a 3-month subscription, and that's the raffle draw from this round's class winners, of which of course there were 4. So give us a brief moment and we will be getting that underway. And as we can see, let's get this raffle underway, ladies and gentlemen, and it is going to be Thomas Cope, Oystein Hereford, Slight Anti of Rob Windsor, and congratulations to Thomas Cope, who becomes what is your winner for the purposes of that 3-month subscription giveaway there. So congratulations to Thomas Cope for taking that raffle prize award. And well, that'll be given to him by the UKSimRacing Administration after today's broadcast. So congratulations to him. We then come on to what is our then 2-month subscription giveaway. And this is the raffle draw from drivers with the VRS logo on their car. And there was an absolute plethora of them, it must be said. So let's get that underway. And without further ado, here we go, and it is going to be Nathan Anstis, Rob Windsor, Helder Gonçalves, James Conley, John Davis and Daniel Shilcock in the entry pool. It looks like it's going to Helder Gonçalves. Wait a minute, is it going to James Conley? By a tiny sliver to James Conley. I mean, I think we've got to get the microscope out for that one. That is the smallest of margins there and then some. But congratulations to James Conley for winning the 2-month subscription for VRS. And then we then come on to what is our 1-month subscription, ladies and gentlemen. And give us a brief moment here, as I do believe we just need to bring that up on screen. So our giveaway bot there just deciding to go to sleep for a brief moment, but it is going to appear on screen. And there it is. It suddenly appears. And well, we can see all of our entrants there. We can also see the chat. Hello to all of you in the YouTube chat, but let's choose a winner then from Paul Lousteau, Thomas Cope, Sammy, Sir Bottlejob, Oystein Hereford, Tom Weston, Satinder Deensa, and Billy Bob 55 Hillbilly Racing. And it is going to be Austin Hereford who is your winner for this. And Austin Hereford taking home a 1-month VRS subscription. So congratulations to him, and all these prizes will be given out after today's broadcast by the UKSimRacing administration. So well done to Austin Hereford. Well done to all of our raffle winners. And we've got plenty more prizes to come with each and every round of racing over the course of this season, as brought to you and sponsored by what is Virtual Racing School or VRS. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to take a breather for what is our post-round interviews, which are going to be coming up in approximately 5 minutes' time. So don't go anywhere. You will see them very shortly. But until then, do let us know in the chat what have been your favourite moments of tonight's racing. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our drivers. And we're going to be hearing the thoughts today from two of our drivers, one in the GTP class and one in the GT3 Pro class. But we're going to kick straight off then with our overall winner after what was a difficult qualifying session. We'll get the story on that from Olympus Esports. It's none other than Thomas Cope in the number 64, and he joins me in the interview now. Good evening to you, Thomas. It's been some time since we've had the pleasure of chatting, but it's great to have you with me. And what a way to open up your season a couple of days ago. Victory at Portimão in absolutely challenging conditions. And it looks so out there, it wasn't easy for anybody, yourself included.
No, it was probably one of the hardest races so far that I've had in UKSR. So really getting that tyre change nailed down and getting it spot on perfectly.
Oh, no doubt. In the end, it came down to strategy and those changeable conditions. But before we come on to the race itself, just talking a little bit about qualifying and this Portimão circuit. I mean, we saw in practice, it was raining, but the circuit seemed to be drying a little bit. But the qualifying session, it looked about just trying to get the car switched on for 4 laps.
Yeah, with the new tyre model at GTPs, it's really hard to switch on tyres on, even from dry tyres on a warm track. So even on cold, wet tyres on a wet track and obviously cooler circuits, it takes you them 3 or 4 laps that you have in qualifying just to get them warmed up. So it's all about that fourth and final lap, really.
Well, that fourth lap being so important, no doubt about it. And in the end, enabling you to achieve P3. It's a very close competition for this season. And just before we come on to the race, of course, I mean, you're one of a number of titans on this grid. We've also got the likes of Austin William Campbell, Patrick Thompson, drivers you've raced with in other series, including those at UKSR. So, I mean, coming into this one, you must be thinking to yourself, you know what, I've really got to get my head down versus these guys.
Yeah, we all know the likes of Patrick, and he's raced with us at Olympus, and my friendship with him as well, to be fair. Well, maybe public enemy number one at the moment, but yeah, no, Patrick's really good, obviously, being at Williams and Austin as well. I mean, there's some really good names up and down that grid, so you got to really put your focus on every race and do the best job you can do every round.
Oh, without a doubt. And speaking then about doing the best job you can every round, in the early stage of the race, it looked like it was a circuit that was gradually drying, but the rain kept coming in and out. And at some points you were leading, at other points you were behind Austin William Campbell. Just take us through how it felt before the pit stop, knowing that the race was very topsy-turvy.
Yeah, me and Patrick were talking about all the way through. It was drying and drying, and with the 40 or 50 cars on track, it was just getting so dry so quick. But yeah, me and Austin had a really good fight, pretty much from start to the pit stop. He made a mistake and I got through, then I made a mistake and he got through, and then we had our moment where we were nose to tail for 4 or 5 laps. And yeah, really congrats to Austin. I mean, unfortunate in the end for the P3, but still a decent result to start off the season.
Oh, most definitely. And coming on to what was really the big turning point in this race, beyond a couple of spins and moments in the gravel, for yourself included, that pit stop. What made you come in when you did? Because you undercutted by the best part of 4 to 5 laps, and we saw a number of drivers in other classes end up putting it into the wall coming out the pit lane, but not you.
Yeah, I got lucky. I put the dry tyres on early. I knew the track was ready for it. My wets were pretty much done. I had nothing left on them, so I was like, I'll come early and see where it goes. Um, I had 3 adventures, I think, on my out lap, coming straight out of pits and wide. I got very lucky to not bin it, but when I got them off past that first lap, they really started firing away. Like I say, warming them tyres up is not easy nowadays, so managed to get the best of that and then start pulling away. And then I had a few adventures as well later on in the stint as well.
Oh, most definitely. A few adventures, but still few and far between, if you will. And as we went deeper and deeper into that final stint, we got to see you gradually eke out a gap, only to then end up in a situation where I think the tyres were quite past their shelf life.
Yeah, the tyres were all right. It was the rain started coming back down in the final 10 minutes of the race. So we started losing the grip again. And being one of the first cars out on track, I thought I'd tone down the pace and sort of bring it home, sort of thing, knowing I had that 20-second lead. So that's why Patrick and Austin started bringing it back. But I've got to say, I'm sorry to Darren Sharples. I don't think you saw it on the broadcast. I got on a damp patch of track through a puddle and completely wiped him out at one point. So ruined his race, but managed to keep my own going. Like I say, I'm really sorry to Darren for that.
Well, it was unfortunate, perhaps a little bit of black cloud over otherwise a sunshine ending race, if you will. But there's plenty of rounds to come, and you've taken the initial lead from this race. But of course, in a week's time, well, less than a week's time now, we head to Fuji Speedway for round number 2. What can we expect from you there?
Probably not much in the dry conditions. The Porsche's not the best, so I'm going to see what I can do and try and get some okay results. But I think the wet rounds is where I'm going to make my money, all being well with the Porsche.
Well, we look forward to that, and it might be a bit of an uphill battle at Fuji, but still, in the foothills of a mountain, it's going to be uphill for everybody. But just before we do let you go, Thomas, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, all the usuals yourself for the broadcast. I mean, I know it's a post-race broadcast, but you've done a really good job. I've loved it all day watching it. The UKSR admin's doing a great job with the season and getting everything underway. I'm playing the part today with April Fools. They've done some good jokes. And the family and everyone is watching as part of my relationships and everything as well.
Well, Thomas, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the commentary room for an interview, and it's great to see you back up there right at the top fighting for victories, including the victory you've taken here at Portimão. And whilst it may be a bit of a battle next week at what is Fuji, I'm sure you'll come out fighting all guns blazing, and we look forward to it there. But until then, all the best, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you very much, Paul.
So hearing it there, ladies and gentlemen, from our GTP class winner, talking about the double-edged sword, if you will, the Porsche, briefly towards the end about the fact it does favour these changeable conditions, but in all dry conditions, which we're expecting at Fuji, it's not quite as strong of a car. But then winding it all the way back, talking about in qualifying, the fact they already came down to that final flying lap, lap number 4, and trying to get that tyre temperature in preparation for that all-or-nothing lap, and in the race as well, the fact the conditions, very difficult to get right, and in the end, opting to pit when he did, whilst his outlap was plagued by mistakes and offs, and he was able to get that tyre temperature and use it to get ahead. And in the closing 10 minutes, the rain came back, but it wasn't enough to try and waylay Thomas Cope from season opening victory. And well, there's plenty more battling to come, no doubt about it. And we've already seen the close competition between him, Patrick Thompson, and Austin William Campbell, just name a couple of his competitors. But now coming on to our second and final interview for today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking to what was our driver in the GT3 Pro Class who almost pulled off a miracle victory in the wet. It wasn't quite enough, but still, he's going to tell us all about it now. And as he joins me in at the interview room, and it's Jack Barker. Good evening to you, Jack. And well, you almost pulled it off. You almost snuck away with the victory in the GT3 Pro Class. I think you needed one more lap or one more corner to do it. But still, a P2 in changeable conditions in an Acura you absolutely love. I mean, you can't complain, can you?
Oh, absolutely not, Paul. Absolutely not. No complaints on my end. You know, yeah, I'm just gut to myself really because I'm sure I'm getting to it later. You know, it was all my own doing. That missing out by just 1.5 seconds, just entirely my own doing.
Well, it was unfortunate. We'll come to it, but let's start off with some territory which may not feel as comfortable, perhaps, and that was your qualifying session. P31 overall, P8 in class. It looked so qualifying just didn't come your way.
Yeah, quite good in qualifying. So I was actually quite surprised because I was doing pretty good in practice. I was, I think, running second for the most part of practice in the moderate wet conditions, but then it just stopped raining at the end of practice, and by the time we got to qualifying, the track had moved to lightly wet. And I know, well, it is likely just me, but I just seemed to really struggle in the light wet conditions. And whether it was those conditions or the fact the car had a lot of fuel in it, I was really struggling in particular with turn 9. The car just was not stable through that corner at all with the line I've been driving. And yeah, I ended up getting my first sort of banker lap in. Then the next 2, I span it of a corner, and on the third lap, I got black flagged for driving too slowly. And with 2.5 minutes left, that was game over for me.
Well, it may have been game over in qualifying, a frustrating session like you've described, but then in the race, I mean, you do have a talent or a knack, if you will, for bringing results together in races in tricky conditions. We only have to look at the recent GT3 Championship campaign, where you did take that absolutely brilliant victory at Hockenheim in the wet, and it was more of the same today at certain points. We saw those elements, but the problem was, I think, the unpredictability going from wet to dry, but at what pace would you be going to dry?
Yeah, so start the race. Well, I had a really good start to the race. Got past quite a few people, even on the main straights. as I was sort of a bit more cautious on the straights, and with the spray, managed to get myself some clear view and past them. But yeah, as the race was going on, I could see my lap times slowly coming down, and I was sort of saying to myself, okay, if we see, look, let's just put a guess here. Let's say if we see 52s, if I can do 52s, let's try it. And then I start hearing some words from a spotter talking about Andrew Fairley, and hearing that he himself is setting 48-second lap times. And I'm thinking, right, Andrew is going 4 seconds faster than the leaders. The only thing that can explain that is dry tyres. So let's try and eke out as much fuel as we can from this car. Try and go as long as we can to get the track as dry as possible, and then come in and get them dries on. And yeah, very much the correct call.
Oh, without a doubt, the correct call in the end, and that little bit of information going a long way. And going to that dry tyre, I mean, the gap was huge at first, but you very quickly brought that gap down, lap after lap. Even when the rain did suddenly come back in the final 10 minutes, it didn't look like it was going to stop you. But in the end, a small mistake by the sounds of things, costing you for potentially surprising everybody with a win at the line.
Yeah, well, quite a few mistakes, actually. So I think, yeah, I came out of the pits, 20, 25 seconds behind... at that point, we were Fleming Osborne, but maybe Osborne might have been Anthony in the lead. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, no. First lap had a wide moment into turn 2, lost about 5 to 10 seconds, and then lap 2 had a big spin out of turn 5, lost about another 15, 20 seconds. So after those two, I think I was at least 45 seconds behind Sir Anthony at that point. But yeah, no. After that, I was able to fully track out where I was on the track, where dry ports were, what the dry lines were, and yeah, I was able to take full advantage of dry lines and the dry tyres, pulling off about 5 to 6 seconds every lap from the leaders. You know, getting past Anstis, getting past Archer, getting past Brockner, and yeah, that final charge to Anthony. Well, on my black box, I was 1.1 seconds just before the final corner on the final lap. And then I just misjudged the entry and took a wide line, which was the wet track, which was the wet parts, which maybe instead of close, what I think would have been like half a second, and would have hopefully gotten me a run onto the start-finish straight to get him on the line, ended up with me pulling off worse and losing a few temps.
Well, it's unfortunate, and one mistake proving costly. It's one of those what-if questions. What if you hadn't have made it? But one thing we can say for certainty is an absolutely brilliant drive to a P19 overall and a P2 in class in the end. And whilst you may not have picked up the victory today, we've still got another 8 rounds to come. Next up is Fuji. We head to Japan, and the home indeed of Honda, but not quite the home circuit of Honda. It'd be the home circuit for Toyota. How are you feeling for Fuji?
Always a fan of Fuji. Absolutely love the place. I mean, yeah, sure, I don't think it's quite as good with the chicane. I'm a big fan of the fast sweeper rather than chicane, but it's still a great circuit. Absolutely love the place.
Well, I'm loving the confidence and the love and appreciation for Fuji. We can expect great things from you there. But just before we do let you go, Jack, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Well, I think Thomas was able to catch most of them. Obviously, your thanks to you for your amazing work, and also for the advancements you've made in the replay technology with the in the post-round technology with the ability to do replays. Also, big thanks to the admin team as always for putting the series on, and I guess a forward apology to the stewards because, you know, multi-class being multi-class. So have fun, stewards! Yay!
Oh, fair play. Well, Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join me in the interview. As it always is, congratulations once again on an absolutely roaring charge to P2 in the GT3 Pro class, and we look forward to plenty more at Fuji next weekend.
Thank you very much, Paul. Good night.
All the best. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard from the 163 driver of Jack Barker, telling us there about his story in the GT3 Pro class, and an intriguing story in qualifying. The fact just not able to put anything together in qualifying, and getting that back, the black flag right at the end of the session, completely bringing what was his final flying lap to a stop. But then in the race, a very different approach, roaring his way up through the field, albeit not being the exception in terms of picking up mistakes. Many are trying making mistakes, including Jack. But as the distance went on, in the end, realising that Andrew Fairley was making what was that decision to move to the dry tyre, and he opted to do so as well, using that information from his spotter, and that enabled him to start to close down that 20+ second gap, which if it weren't for a mistake coming into the final last couple of corners on that final lap, could we have seen Barker absolutely run to victory? Well, we can always ask ourselves that, but one thing we know for certain is he'll be eager to go one step further in a week's time, move from P2 in the GT3 Pro Class to victory at Fuji, and I think we're all going to be excited to see whether he can make it happen. Now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today. We've only had 2 drivers join us for interview, and we want to say a big thank you to them once again. Firstly, to the number 64 driver of Thomas Cope for Olympus Esports, who we heard from in the GTP class, the winner of the class today. And then we just heard from Made for Racing's Jack Barker in the 163 for GT3 Pro. Well done to them both, and well, we look forward to plenty more interviews with our drivers as the weeks and rounds go on. But with that, we've still got a bit more to cover in this broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere, because we do need to give you an update then on the standings after one round, albeit these are provisional, because I do believe the shooting decisions have yet to come in. And what we can see is that after one round, starting with the GTP class, Thomas Cope has opened up that early lead. However, he hasn't opened up that much of a lead, because as we can see, Patrick Thompson matching him there, 30 points apiece, and that would be for the run-up slot, plus also the pole position, and also the fastest lap in the race. Austin William Campbell sits in P3, meanwhile, ahead of Christian Maltrek, with Ryan Moles round off the top 5, and I suspect we're going to see a really good battle between the number 4 and the number 18 drivers over the race distance, and perhaps they could even get involved for a podium or two, particularly if one of their top 3 rows drops it, based on what we've seen in this opening round. But of course, we had changing conditions. How will they drive in the dry? That's an entirely different question. Matthew Sheraton was in a bit of an anonymous P6 in the end today for Aztec Racing, but still staying ahead of the Empire Motorsport trio of Joe Newman, Nathan Foster and Ryan M. Davies, and then Amit Rajik Ghosh completing the top 10 there, the privateer, where Aldous Jatatus P11 for Absolute Motorsport Ace-Lift, having a frustrating day in the office. The same could be said for Joshua Wilson after a great start in the end, a couple of spins, really putting a downer on his race. And then we did see the last of the points finishers, Sam Sherwood. Not on the grid for this round was Xander Hill, John Eddowes, Jacko Taylor, Darren Norquette, Damien Lobbit or Andreas Nordenhoff, and we will hope to see them at Fuji. But then coming on to the LMP2 class, well, here we can see after round it is Oystein Hereford, who's opened up a lead of 3 points for Effect Simulations Carbon ahead of DDK Racing Team's Tom Farr, and Ben Cullen completes the top 3 for Effect Simulations' sister team. He's also picked up a bonus point there, so therefore Effect Simulations stealing the points between them, with just the Stakielkos in the end holding on to P4 for Over Limit Racing by 2 points over Tractix Racing's Helder Gonçalves, and then it's James Ibram, Ryan Walker and Daniel Shilcock completing those with points to their name. Not on the grid this time around, where it did seem to be, or at least didn't classify as a finisher, Simon Bamber, Luca Krubel. We also see James Acklam, Emil Koopmans, Dan Blackwell, and Brandon Hay. But I'm sure we'll see plenty more from them in the weeks to come. And then coming on to the GT3 classes, starting with the GT3 Pro class. It's Cy Anthony who leads the way then after what has been this opening round on 30 points. 2 clear of Jack Barker, with Casper Rotner in P3 on 26. All 3 drivers there round off that podium for Dragon Razio, Made for Racing and Old Dudes in Cars. Atomic Esports' Andy Archer there, P4, and a brilliant resilient drive there to 4th place ahead of Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Irvine, and Sean Cranley Swash making it to P6 for Anstey Sports in a very quiet race, at least in terms of the broadcast cameras, but I'm sure it wasn't a quiet race, all things considered, when he was behind the wheel. Tom Weston was P7 for DDK Racing Team at this point, ahead of Darren Sharples for Old Dudes in Cars. Then the bonus point over the race distance to the fastest lap going to Andrew Fairley, who takes 15 points in this round for DDK Racing Team, and Jack Osborne with that pole position lap, where in the end it's some compensation in the fact he lost out on the win with that huge shunt into the barrier, but the Atomic Esports driver still has 13 points to his name after one round. Unfortunately not scoring any points, Matthew Morris, and we also didn't see Josh Boot or Jeff Griffiths make it to the checker flag either, but I'm sure they will at Fuji. And then coming to the GT3 AM class, last but by no means least, well, here we can see Rob Windsor leading the way with a bonus point to his name for what was that fastest lap for UKSimRacing Irvine by 3 points then over Steve Hughes for Anti Sports, 26 points for James Foster for DCW Racing. He'll be kicking himself 9 what could have been a big 30 to open up his campaign, with James Connolly P4 for UKSimRacing Button ahead of Richard Jones with that pole lap giving him an extra point for SAS Racing, and John Davis just missing out on the top 5, but still plenty of points to come as he starts his day in P6. Daniel Pace P7 ahead of Michael Meyer, with Alex Brown and Matt Edmondson completing those with points to their name and completing the top 10. And yet score any points, Simon Hartley, Shaminder Deensa, Satinder Deensa. We'll see the Deensa brothers on the grid next week at Fuji from what I'm gathering for Tiki Sim Sport. We're looking forward to that. And Aaron Beaver for Blue Chip Racing there at the back of the field. But still more to come as the rounds go on. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's broadcast and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to be on the grid or just wanting to know more about the UK sim racing community and everything in between, well, we definitely recommend you check out our official website first and foremost, and that's UKSimRacing.co.uk, which is the beating heart of all information that goes for UK sim racing. Alternatively, if you're more of a social media person, you can always follow us on Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. We can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements regarding the UK sim racing community, and we'd like to take this moment just before we close, say a big thank you to our title sponsor, and that of course is VRS, or Virtual Racing School. Their web address being what is VRS.racing. Established in 2016, Virtual Racing School aims to help sim racers get faster through the provision of top tier software and hardware which draws upon the knowledge and experience of both real life racing drivers and sim racing professionals. A VRS subscription, extremely popular with sim racers around the world, provides an intuitive solution for combining data analysis and coaching, which may be used by racers at all levels to take their racing to the highest level. Meanwhile, the VRS Direct Force Pro line of wheelbases and pedals offers the cutting edge in sim racing hardware as used by more professional sim racers and real life racing drivers than any other brand in the world, including Formula One sensation Oscar Piastri. So if you want to get faster, be sure to head to VRS.racing today to find out more. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, we turned the wick up because that was round number 1 in the championship. We've got plenty more to come. And round number 2, this coming Sunday on the 6th of April 2025, will see us head to Japan for the Fuji Speedway circuit. And well, it'll be in its full splendour, and all the drivers will be attacking it like no other at the Grand Prix course. And we'll be live from circuit side to bring you all the racing action as it unfolds. But until then, we've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.